Hey everyone, welcome to Dialog Choices podcast. We're back again.
We
Back at it again.
I'm so fucking addicted to Subnautica Below Zero.
Oh, you started all. Wait, it came out already, or do you?
it already came out.
It came out like on Friday, but I got a code like a week early. So I've actually I was recording it right up until we started doing the podcast. Actually, I think I'm like 16 episodes deep already, and it premieres tomorrow for me. So I've actually been like neglecting my schedule. Like I've been like, oh, what's due tomorrow? And then like I kick that like slightly further down the road by recording 2 episodes of it, and then I record Subnautica for the rest of the day, and I've been doing that like over and over again, like barely maintaining the other games while recording Subnautica all the time.
You're gonna spend the next month all dealing with that decision.
Yeah, well, it happens every now and then. Like
It's good when it happens.
I remember, well, yeah, whenever you have
think.
when you actively feel the pull where you just want to like I find that it's really easy when you're self-employed to just lose time. And you're just like, what the fuck? How is it 6 p.m. already? I haven't done anything. I don't even know what happened. Like you're in this state of like not letting yourself do the stuff you might do for fun. Like I'm not like watching Netflix or like playing Overwatch or doing any of the stuff that's like the free timey kind of things, because I'm like, I still need to do today's work and so on, but somehow mysteriously can watch the day just vanish. And then so it's like I kind of can be in like this eternal loop of like back being in my high school experience of like having homework and like not letting myself do certain things until I finish my homework, but then also being like, how am I not done with my homework? It's 10 p.m. and it's like, it's not because I was working on it the whole time. I somehow would like manage to procrastinate, but it's not, but also not letting myself do the things I want to do. And it's like, it's a stupid loop. And I find that easy to fall into being self-employed when working at home and stuff. It's like, I'll like be like, I haven't recorded anything and it's late again. How the fuck did I do this again? So if there's something that I weirdly have like an urge to play and I'm like trying to get to it and I'm kind of chomping at the bit, like I kind of try to use that, because when you feel really motivated to play a game, suddenly it's like you can just like, I recorded 2 entire days of videos in one day. Like I remember like there was moments of like playing like I get into a groove with like the Yakuza style games, for example, and I remember being in a particular moment where it's like I came back because it was finally time to record the next episode of Judgment, which was a Yakuza game, basically. And I was like, motherfucker, it's been like a month and a half since I've had to record this game. That's how long I had a backlog, because I had previously binged it so much that I just got like, I had dozens of videos just ready. Like in a given day, I might get 10 videos done. And it's like, what in the world? I have energy for this, apparently.
Then you're lucky that you publish one video per day. If you did like me, where it's one video every 2 days, then it's more than a month. If you have 30 videos recorded, it's, well, I guess it's July.
I used to have that schedule. It was back when, because it was I used to be like, I was desperate for growth in the earlier days, and I was trying to like, it's also back when I would be more likely to not finish stuff, not because I let it not get finished on purpose, but because it was just I'd take on too many things and it just becomes unmanageable. But like there was a time where it's just like every time a new release came out that was within my like genre umbrella and looked reasonably okay, and my standards were not good enough for that because I kept playing like certain like JRPG style stuff that I would not have liked to play otherwise. I was still kind of feeling out what kind of stuff I'd exactly want to cover, like Batman Arkham Knight and weird stuff like that doesn't really fit. And like I would just take too many on, and I'd be like, well, I still got to make sure they're coming out frequently-ish. So then I start like staggering the schedule into like this like every other day thing. And I remember like having that dynamic of like, I think Odin Sphere Life Thrasir and Disgaea 5 being on alternating days, for example. And it's like,
oh, Disgaea 5 must have taken you forever then.
Yeah, it's like these are already fucking long games. Having them being every other day, it's just an eternity. So it's like this, like if I feel like a playthrough lasts a long time now and it's like 90 episodes, when it's happening every other day, it's like, that's like half a year. Like if you want it, you just want to move on at some point. It's exhausting.
I'm used to it.
And yeah, that's just your status quo, I guess, because you play a bunch of like CRPGs that are all like that. And you play
the longest I think I've had was like 18 months of playing the same game. And it wasn't obviously every day, but
Your Pillars
No.
2 playthrough was massive, right?
Oh, Pillars 2. Yeah, must have been that. That must have been the one.
Yeah.
I was thinking of Pathfinder Kingmaker, but Pillars 2 is probably longer.
Yeah. I just remember looking at your channel every now and then and being like, he's still going. That number's getting real big.
I get the impression, I'm not 100% sure, but I get the impression that because, for us, if just to give context to the listener, what really matters is the first episode. And it's very rare that a middle episode, the way we name and thumbnail our episodes, it's very rare that the middle episode actually matters for bringing new audiences in. So the first episode is all that matters, but I'm pretty sure that if you're the channel that just does the first episode or a couple of episodes, you have a disadvantage on the search results when compared to channels like us who do a lot of episodes after. I've seen some of my series start off like 5th or 6th in the search results, but then as I release more and more episodes, they just creep up. I don't know.
I mean, sometimes my playlists have better search rankings than my videos do.
Oh yeah,
because of how the metrics work and so on. But I know there's like channels that are really popular, and they have this. Like one of them in particular is like a no commentary channel that has like a naming scheme where they'll upload multiple part 1s of the same game because it's just because of the fact that they have they just know that like part 1 is really good SEO because a lot of people type part 1. So they have like part 1 of their actual playthrough, but then they also have like game full playthrough part, and it'll still be called part 1 at the end.
I've seen that happen recently.
It's a full playthrough, but it's still called part 1 because of good SEO. And then they'll do sometimes. I think they'll do a third edit that's like game name, the movie, which is like a cinematic abridged version of the playthrough. That's mostly like the cutscenes and like story beats and so on, and it's like really abridged. And that one still says part 1, so they'll have like 3 part 1s for the same game, and only one of them is like part 1 of a series because the other 2 are standalone videos that are the entire game. But it's the SEO hunting. I used to have aggressive SEO bait titles when I was having my early days, and I was uploading like just Dark Souls 1 and 2 and stuff back then, as that stuff was getting going. If you look at my original playthrough of Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 2, the title is just go all the way to the character limit, just spamming like tags essentially. And so the entire title is just any item or environment or boss or whatever. And like I still do that whenever I upload a video, I scan through the video and try to find like, okay, is there a boss fight in this video? Name the video that. If there's not a boss fight, then like, do I go to a new area or something that's like, this is the first video of this region or level or whatever? Then name the video that. Or like, do I get a special like weapon in this one that's like noteworthy? Or do I meet a new do I meet a new character, like a party member? Like like I name the videos based on that. And like that's just because like that's a vestige of that is like that you'll definitely get a spike of views midway through your series if you look for your entire playthrough. You'll notice like that part 23 did great because I fought like whoever the fuck in that one, and people like to look up videos of that fight in particular and so on. But my original Dark Souls 2 playthrough would be like Lady Quayleg, Chloranthy ring, like I was just like fill the whole thing with like name comma because I was just trying to get any of it going, and I guess it worked. But
yeah, definitely works.
It's like not a great look for the video titles for them to all be like a mess like that, but also it's a pain.
Oh yeah, I definitely feel you. For a long time, I would even write a comment for the first comment because I read somewhere that having a comment pinned would increase the SEO. So it's such a like going through each episode having to write something. Oh yeah. But I think it really works. There's a downside to it, which is that it makes the video title a spoiler. I'm always very careful not to spoil anything, or even in the thumbnail for people who are watching. Because I could just, show the last boss and say, he betrays me! And I was like, give away the whole plot. That's definitely better for SEO. And there are channels who do that, but that's bad.
I use judgment from time to time. Like there's kind of like a sliding thing where sometimes I'll be more hinty with my title. But generally speaking, I think it's totally fine to just put the name of the monster in Monster Hunter or put the name of the boss in Dark Souls as the title of the video, because it's just what it is.
Yeah.
This is what's going to happen. And
Dark Souls isn't as bad for that.
And it's how you keep things going as a channel. And yeah, like people, I've had some weird, I remember there was one commenter that said they were going to unsubscribe when they saw that I was about to start playing Monster Hunter Rise because they don't want to get spoiled by the videos. And it's like, I mean, just don't. If you're not going to watch the videos and you don't want to be spoiled by the other parts of the video, it's like, well, the thumbnails are. I don't make a unique thumbnail for each video that is like the fight or whatever, so that's not going to be spoilers. And the title is like
it's the same title now, right? That's what you do.
Like you go to subscriptions. Well, they always had that format, but it was like after it would be like game name and then like part whatever, then dash, then like the title that's unique about that video. And like when you look in your, like, those are good for search results, but when you look in your subscriptions, it just says game name part whatever, and then it goes to an ellipses immediately because you're out of space for the preview. So I'm like, what are you afraid of being spoiled? Like one it's weird just because like when you play Monster Hunter, you can't really be surprised by like any monsters. Like you literally pick the monsters from a mission select screen that's like, you're gonna fight this monster now. It's like, so it's not like you go in and be like, ooh, what's gonna happen? Like that mystery was kind of preserved by World, where they'd be like, oh man, someone's leading to disruptions in the Coral Highlands, what's up, go tracking or whatever. And then you like slowly like look around for 5 minutes and then you get surprised by a cutscene of like, oh, that's who's here. But like in Rise, you literally pick the monsters from a roster and fight them. Like, there's no chance to be surprised. So the idea of spoilers is a weird thing. But
Rise is an interesting evolution for the series. I can't get a grip if people like it or not. I guess they do. But like, I see some reviews just be like, this is the last throes of a series or something. Like people who just did, I guess they didn't like World. And just,
yeah, at the time it seemed like people were pretty high on World, but now everyone just complains about World in the comments for Rise, and I'm like, I don't know. It's obviously like 100 different people's opinions and so on.
Yeah, I don't know. Monster Hunter seems popular enough that I doubt people are genuinely disinterested. You know, like I don't think there's a majority consensus that Monster Hunter is not enjoyable. I think there's just a lot of people who are like, this isn't my Monster Hunter, and they're shaking their fist holding like Monster Hunter 3 in their hand. Yeah. It's like, all right, well, sorry, you know, maybe like in this, maybe the next Monster Hunter game may be closer to the old ones, and
no,
I don't know.
Do you think that's going to happen?
It just sounds
Monster
like
Hunter
it just sounds like what Capcom
like Sonic
games do.
Yeah, like Monster Hunter just kind of just turns into whatever it feels like being that day of the week. So like, this game's going to be open world. This game's going to be super linear. This game's going to be like half and half. Like every Monster Hunter game is its own unique thing. So I don't know why people. I don't know what
not
people
even
expect.
entirely that though. Like
are they not? I feel like they're always their own worlds. They have similar monsters, but like.
But I think the most recent one. I think the most recent two are more larger divergences to some extent. And so like when I compared it to Capcom stuff, I was just thinking about like this debate about like, this is the worst one and the best one at the same time. It's because like Capcom, you know, actually makes changes from game to game and doesn't just like Ubisoft their games out and just kind of like just see how long the same formula works for. So like, it's like Resident Evil where like each individual game is noticeably different. Like the remakes of 2 and 3 were just a different thing than 7 was. Like, they're like, oh, 7 was this big successful thing and people like this. And like, oh, they're going to remake 2 and 3 now. And it's like, oh, this is different. It's not like the 1 remake, but it's also not like 7. It's just a different style of Resident Evil. And then 8, it came out, and I haven't played it or looked at it much, but like by most accounts, it sounds like it's like, okay, it's not like 2 and 3. It is like 7 again, but it's also not like 7 again because they immediately changed a bunch of the format and like concepts of like how it is laid out. And it's like, okay, it's like they're kind of like constantly redefining that franchise and not really stagnating it, which is good often and sometimes bad. Like when 6 happens and so on, and some not so great games. Monster Hunter has a weird trajectory. Like I think every single Monster Hunter game was a bunch of separate zones you had to load one by one, but because you kept like going to like hallways that would like load the next map essentially, and each map was like 12 chunks or something. And so like when a monster ran, they ran to a different section you had to load again when you got there. And like World did a bunch of other different quality of life changes and streamlining things and things that people agree with and disagree with, but I think the biggest change was supposed to be the fact that it made each map one continuous map, and so you could still see the map defined as a series of numbered sections, but they were now, you just ran around like freely throughout that. And I guess one of the janky things that happened in Rise is that midway through development they had like decided that it was going to be like World, where it's continuous maps, so they had to like take what were in many cases old maps from other games and like remake them so that they were one big continuous thing instead of a bunch of loading gates. Rise is interesting because it has new ideas, but it's also made by the B team, and so it has a lot of stuff in common with the older games before World. So you have weird returning mechanics that don't make sense if you only played World, but it also has World's continuous map design. But also, like, with how like time consuming and expansive World was, Rise is kind of like surprisingly arcadey and brief, and like you get I got in like the first time you roll the credits in like part 10 of my playthrough, and I was like, what is happening? But then you have to like grind your way up to high rank, and then like I think I'm more or less, I think I rolled credits on the more or less like the true ending or whatever in like part 30, which is like definitely fast compared to World at least. And there was definitely like a brief like, oh, you just hop in, you fight a monster, you get out, and like for a large chunk of the playthrough I was beating 3 monsters per episode. Like there would be like these little 20-minute hunts, whereas like by the end of the end of Iceborne, the expansion to World, what was burning me out was that I would fight something like Valkana, and it'd be like, you have a 50-minute time limit to beat this boss, and I would fucking time out. I would actually run out of time fighting the boss continuously for almost an hour, and it's like, oh god, I just lost an entire hour, mad. And now I got to start it over again. And you're like, that's already rough as a person, like that part of you that's like, oh, I just died in a roguelike. Do I really want to start over kind of feeling? But as a let's player, you're like, what do I do? Like, do I put out a video of each individual attempt that's an hour long? Like this could literally be like a six consecutive episodes of me just trying to fight Velkhana for an hour each time and losing. So I'm like, no, like I gotta like, clearly I gotta try over and over again and like make a mega cut of some kind. But then it's like, oh my god, I've put like hours into fighting this boss and he's still not defeated. And if this was Sekiro or Dark Souls, I would have fought them like 30-40 times, but I fought them like 4 times. Like, it's not even a good number of attempts in that amount of time. It's like, Jesus Christ. There's there's something brief and like chill about how quick the fights are by comparison in Rise. But also this is clearly a really aged it's really clearly an old franchise that has gotten so many iterations, and it has so many vestigial limbs. Like, there are so many systems in Rise that have clearly just been around since like the beginning of the franchise, and you can't really articulate to a new player, by which I mean me, what they're even for. Like, you pick up so many items, and there's so many craftable things, and there's so many things. There's like cooking systems and so on, and so many other weird item systems in the game, and it's like really hard to explain, by which I mean I still don't understand, and I've beaten the game. I think what many of these things are even for.
I think the interface is the biggest culprit in that, specifically in Rise, because I don't remember the interface of World. But I know you. I've seen you look at those systems and be like, yeah. And I think it's just, I don't know. I think it's like they just expect people to either know what they're doing, or if they don't, they just don't engage. Because can you not ignore them?
So reliant on wikis and YouTubers that explain games to you. Like, they're like, that's the go-to. I get so many comments, and I forget the people's names because I don't really record them to memory, but they keep saying like, watch this YouTuber and watch this YouTuber and watch this YouTuber. Like everyone in the community seems to just rely on like 3 YouTubers to explain the game to them, from optimal builds to how entire systems work or what the best moves are for each weapon. And you get so many backseat comments that are just like explaining that you're playing the game wrong because you're not using the video guide to just use the optimal moveset that guy uses, and that one guy decides the optimum play of the entire player base of a game, which is just a lot. But
yeah, that's not.
As somebody
that's good game design.
It's not great. There is good game design in Monster Hunter, but it is not exclusively good game design. Yeah. Like there's entire systems. Like this, I think this game added kunai. Like at the beginning of the game, it's like you got kunai now, and you keep hearing about things that like this affects your cooldown of your kunai, or this gives you bonus kunai, or this and that. And it's introduced alongside the wire bug, and the wire bug is like a bug that's tied to a cooldown. There's an interface element on the bottom of the screen that's always there, and you use it for mobility, and you use it for certain special abilities for each of the weapons. They all have a special wire bug ability, and like that switch out and so on. And like there's all this wire bug stuff going on. And so immediately I'm like, oh, wire bug stuff. And I completely forgot they even mentioned kunai. Then I look every now and then I just find kunai in my interface, and I'm like, what the fuck is a kunai for?
I don't know what it is.
A kunai is a ninja throwing dagger.
Oh.
Throw a kunai. It's a throwing dagger that ninjas use.
Yeah.
And it's like, what the fuck is a kunai for? Why do I want a kunai? I have a gun lance. I have a giant lance that's taller than me that fires explosives and has a shield. What do I want a kunai? Who is the kunai for? There's no unarmed person that needs a kunai to fight. And like
for people without the gun lance?
And everyone has a weapon, and all the weapons are a lot. Like, so I'm like, who's this kunai for? And it's like one of those things where it's like, at this point, I've beaten the game, and the game just never answered that question. And so like, they just expect you to like research every individual mechanic just on the off chance it might be useful in some way. Which maybe it's not. Maybe kunai are stupid. I don't know if they're an old mechanic that was brought back or if they're specific to this game. I feel like they're specific to this game because this is like the Japanese Ninja Village game. Like that's the setting. So like, oh, they added kunai for some reason. They must be important for some reason. I kept waiting for it to come up, and it just never came up. And now I beat the game, and I'm like, I guess I'll never know.
It's interesting that you say that it's the Japanese Village game, but that's one thing that really struck me is that at first I thought it was just another expansion for Hunter Monster World, because it plays very similar. Or it looks like it plays very similar, and it even looks very similar where when you're just exploring, which is the large part of the game. The story also, like it, I don't know. Dark Souls. When you look at Dark Souls 1, Dark Souls 2, and 3, everything is so different from each other. I feel. Yeah. Even though the game plays the same. They definitely don't go that route with the Monster Hunter, do they?
Not necessarily.
The same enemies.
As somebody who played a lot of World, the fidelity difference is noticeable. Rise is noticeably lower fidelity because it's a Switch game. So maybe when it comes out on PC and so on, it might look different, or it might just be because it's by the B team that makes those like the previous Monster Hunter games were like. They were like Wii U and Switch exclusives and 3DS exclusives. So like they're used to being lower fidelity as a franchise. So it might be that those assets just exist on that level. So even when it might be that when Rise comes to PC, it'll be noticeably lower fidelity still than World, because it just looks kind of cheaper. And it's like, it's not bad, but it's just, there's like a blurriness. There's like, oh, this like one generation ago kind of feel when you look at like the environment, and it's like, it's just not quite sharp enough and not quite textured enough. Like it's just, everything just looks a little older in that way. That's, you can just kind of notice just from playing too many video games. Like that stuff's kind of noticeable, but you almost get the sense that like entire character models and move sets and so on kind of get copy pasted from game to game, because it is like this incredibly bloated game that is repeated over and over again, and that's part of the appeal. On some level, because I talk about like the incredibly bloated series of weird items and esoteric nonsense that it's like, well, who is this for? Why does this system exist? What is the point of this? And that stuff's kind of messy. But the beautiful part of the game being bloated is that there's just like 14 different weapons, and each of them just is a different. You're just a different character when you use them.
Yeah,
and it's like
so
it's like they're like character classes. I wish that was more bloated. I wish there was a new weapon every game. You'd think that'd be like the goal, to introduce a new weapon each game. But
well,
even though
they still have to code it all and balance.
Yeah, you have to rebalance it every game, and you have to figure out like they're always changing something about the overall trajectory from game to game. So they have to like kind of tweak all the weapons, and that's a whole thing. And this time around, in particular, like the wire bugs added like a special move to each weapon, but then you find out later that's like a slot, and you can slot in like 3 or 4 different things per slot, so that you get a wild variety of different moves, and that's just, it is a lot. And so them doing that for like 14 weapons it's pretty fucking cool. So like I always get this experience of like, wow, I'll never fully experience this game, because like Monster Hunter is the fucking like Overwatch of like loot grinding games, I guess, because there's just, because it's like oh, today I'm going to try to learn how to play Anna and whatever, like in Overwatch, and like you have this massive roster of Overwatch characters that just takes a lot to learn, and it's like you look at their kit and you're like, okay, I think I get it, but then you play it for like hundreds of hours still trying to get it right about like where to be and how to aim, and like what your cooldown management and the ult economy and like all these nuances of the character. And like Monster Hunter has like 14 different weapons, and all of those have like this like I get these comments are like, okay, it's been 20 hours and you still haven't gotten any better at this, and I'm like, all right, dick, but also like, yeah, like it like somewhat indicates the elitism there, somewhat indicates like the level of like complexity that this game does have, and so on. Like I can literally beat the entire game with one weapon and people are still being like, wow, you're still bad at that weapon, and it's like, great. No, I'm not gonna have time for the other 14 then, huh?
Yeah,
that's the playstyle differences. There's definitely an appeal.
The thing is, I think that it's just inevitable unless you really look up strategy guides, and even then probably it is inevitable anyway, because there's just so many playstyles and so many like optimizations that you can do, and then people are just hyperbolic by nature, and that's also the comments you remember. Are just
rude, and they also like insist on being like, you're not playing exactly how I would, which means you're playing worse or whatever. And it's like, motherfucker, I beat the whole game without losing. Like, I did it. I beat the final boss as it exists right now, and I died a lot of times, but you have to die 3 times in one mission to fail the mission. It's getting, people call it getting carted. Carted is because they roll you back into camp on a cart. So you have 3 lives essentially, and they're shared amongst all of your co-op partners. And if 3 people get wiped out, then then you fail the hunt and have to start over. Which I've seen a lot of that in Rise in co-op, doing like off-screen grinding to get certain pieces of gear. I'm like, it's like I want to do it a little bit absent-mindedly and multitask. So I join multiplayer so I don't have to try as hard. And boy, even though I'm not trying as hard, other people are a lot worse because they're all dying all the time. And I guess maybe I've just been like forged in the flames of playing the whole game in single player, so I've had to take care of myself all this time. But people die so fucking much. Like I've actually had times where I'm like, you know what? 3 times is too many failures. I guess I'll just do it myself, even though it's just more of a pain in the ass, because these people are so negligent. They'll just all die enough that I don't get the progress I was going for by playing lazy co-op mode. But Monster Hunter is a lot of fun.
Lazy co-op mode easy mode becomes hard mode.
Monster Hunter is a lot of fun. We
tried to
do a playthrough with we had a playthrough with Effie and Andrew for a bit there on the PC version of World, and it just kind of, I guess it just kind of fell off because we
Final Fantasy. You're still playing Final
Fantasy?
Not even
entirely that. I think it's just other people started showing up more for the weekend, so we stopped playing just me and Effie and Andrew, because that was like the Overwatch crew, and for a while we were the only people showing up on weekends. So I think that kind of fell off there. But then, yeah, like once I started doing a solo series with Andrew, that turned into Final Fantasy, that's pretty much speaks for the idea of having any like Effie Andrew specifics. But no, I kept, it's rough as a game. I kept wanting to have I keep wanting to have like a situation where we can have like a chill rotating cast of like oh, what if we had like Colonel and Marty and Bird and so on, and everyone has like their Monster Hunter character on World on PC, and then we could all like rotate in and out, like whoever shows up that week, and just kind of like, you know, get some progress in Monster Hunter and hang out and play the game, because it's just kind of that, it's kind of designed to be like a semi-aimless kind of grind where you just kind of like gather materials and work on whatever set you're working on, or try a new weapon today once you reach the end game. But it's so much work to get players to the end game of World, because you got to like shepherd them through all of these sequential hunts, and then you have to like fish for the cutscenes to get those to trigger, and like people can't join your mission until the cutscene triggers, and then they can join you to help you, and it's this big annoying process. We spent an entire day just farming Marty through that process to try to get him to the high rank element of the game, and then after one day of that, it must have not been a fun process getting pushed through, because he didn't want to play the game ever again. After one day, I'm like, fuck, the experiment failed. Yeah. God damn it. It would have been, it was a nice dream, but getting every individual player there is hard. And then like as a streamer, you're like, do I do a weird video series where I like awkwardly restart the campaign over and over again in the series every time a new person potentially wants to join, and we have to like get them through the entire campaign again just to get them caught up? Because it's just like there's a lot of barrier to entry. Like it's got that classic multiplayer problem of like not being able to get everybody on the same footing so you can all play together. It's like when I played Warframe and my co-op partners, like they played the game obsessively, and Warframe, you can't necessarily make like a new character as far necessarily to play with your friends. So it's like your account is just like, I'm level 11 billion, and this is my one Warframe account, and yet most switch suits or whatever, and it's like, it's just not fun to play that game when you're a new character and your partner is like 11 billion and they're killing stuff just by existing in the level with them and not even fighting, and you're like, when do I get to play? And it's like,
that was more or less my experience with Warframe. I joined with somebody else who was, I think, probably like level 50 or something. So nothing like tremendously over leveled.
Oh yeah.
But it was enough for me to never have to worry about dying. So basically, it's just Warframe is a really frantic game, and it plays really. It's like the movement is really fun to do, but also the lack of challenge. After a couple of hours, I was like, okay, well, I've had my belly full of Warframe. Yeah. I'm good for life.
Or the idea of just like your over-leveled friend joining your Borderlands world and making the game like trivial. Like every single multiplayer progression-based game needs to have like some kind of play with your friends level lock system. Like, sure,
like Dark Souls does that.
Opt out of it if you don't care about having a good experience or whatever. But like for people that want to have a better experience, they really like that needs to be there.
I agree. Even Dark Souls does that, and Dark Souls is arguably the game that shouldn't have that, or that maybe would be fun if it didn't. Where like if your super overpowered friend joins, he can just one shot everything for you. But no, they nerf characters down to the hosts. I don't know if it's down to the host or if it's.
I don't remember that.
Dark Souls 3 does that for sure. Like
I thought it was more like you have to be within a level range to even be able to summon each other.
No, you can summon any character from, as long as you're. I'm talking about password locked multiplayer rather than
At this point, it's been long enough between games. I'm losing track of all the mechanics. I remember when I was in the middle of playing the trilogy, it was like you'd start to memorize like the bizarre intricacies of how every single system in those games was different between the three games, and like. There's all these bizarre, like, oh, right, in this game you got to do this thing with the bone or whatever the fuck. And, like, there's, like and that was true for, like, half the systems of each game. Like, they would just change again. And you're like, oh, crap, yeah like, this is how that game works and how that game works. I'll be so out of the loop now because, like, I'm not actively looping through those games anymore, and I don't remember so much. It's weird to think.
I think I remember. But then
be a
again, I
weird
go back
dummy
and
now.
watch Let's Plays. I watch Let's Plays every once in a while. I think the last Let's Play that I watched was yours of the Dark Souls 2, the other one, the second, like
Color
the
of
remake.
the First Sin.
Yep, that's the one.
It's so disorienting to go back to old games that you once knew a lot of, and suddenly you're just like, you're useless. Like I have a New Game Plus playthrough of Bloodborne that never got finished, and now it's like, God, that might have been 2015, so it's probably been like 6 years now. And it's like, if I tried to go back to that, I'm like, I'd be useless. And I had to confront this week because I went back and played Disco Elysium Final Cut's new content. Because I realized, like, oh, if I ever do a new playthrough of that game, it'll be a whole new play style, and it'll probably be like this horrible person cop character that I hate because like
That's what
already,
I'm doing.
yeah, like I already played a character
Exactly
I actually
like that.
liked, so obviously I'm going to have to do like the opposite next time. But I realized that if there's new content, I want to experience it as the character I actually like, not as the character I hate.
Oh, I see.
Like I want to experience it with me as a character I like, and with Kim liking me, and so on, and see what that new content's like. So I went in and played it, which turns out to be a good thing, because actually the nature of the new content is so divergent that I will literally play a different level if I play as the bad cop later, because that's the nature of that content. But oh my God, I spent hours trying to just start the DLC. Like I lost so much time this week.
The DLC?
Just trying, yeah. Like I finished it. I finished the quest chain, and it's like I ultimately got like 2 hours of footage out of it. I probably spent
Wait, are
2
you
or
talking
3
about Disco
hours
Elysium?
just trying to do it.
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't understand.
Do you know about the new quests?
Is it a DLC? I thought it was just integrated into the main game.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just DLC. It's just what you call like the new content that wasn't part of the original playthrough.
Oh, you couldn't even start the game? I don't get it.
No, I mean, I couldn't figure out how to get into the DLC, like the new content, like how to access it, how to start the scripting, like how to trigger it, how to get there, and what was going on. And there's such a frustrating lack of documentation. And I'm like, I fucking hate this. I'm so fucking mad right now.
I have no idea where it is either.
Yeah, once I got there, I had a good time, but boy, it was like I thankfully had an exhaustive number of saves that were all manually named from that game that spanned my entire playthrough, so I could teleport to any part of my playthrough and try to get there from there. But like I had like these issues where I would get to a particular time, I finally realized, like, oh, it has to be before this particular day is when the trigger starts happening for that thing. So it's like I get to that day and it's like, okay, I need to sleep to make the next thing happen. And it's like, oh, fuck. Okay. You get your bearings and you realize, like, okay, it's 10 p.m. and the bridge is still up in this part of the playthrough, so I can't cross the bridge yet. That means I can only sleep above the bar in those like in like the hotel room. And it's like,
yeah.
Oh, I have $8.
And you don't have money.
I need $20 to sleep there. And you're like, what the fuck do I do? And you're like going around trying to find money and like I can't pick up any garbage anywhere. Like and I'm trying to remember, like, where the fuck do you like sell stuff, and what can you sell in this game to make money? It's like when you think you're just gonna like load up into this dialogue heavy game and just like talk to the right guy and access the conversation for the DLC and then just go from there. But the game has all these systems that are in your way, and so in order to navigate going to bed just to try to start accessing the DLC, you go through like hours of troubleshooting and googling things and trying to figure out like, what are these systems, like how the fuck do I make money in this game, and like how do I go to sleep? And you're like,
did you never ask him about his car?
Ask who about his car?
Kim Kitsuragi. Do you not know about his wheels?
I feel like I remember his car because he took pride in it or something.
So I'm not going to spoil it too much. It's a little bit of a spoiler, but so in my first playthrough, I think I pawned Kim's wheels from his car,
Oh yeah,
to
the
pay
rims.
for my bed. The rims, yeah. I think I did that. And on this playthrough, I think I'm gonna give them to Kuno because he wants some new rims.
No,
Kuno is something else.
that's part of the massive headache is that like it's this big continuous game of so many quest lines and characters and so on, and then when you time travel throughout different parts of the playthrough, troubleshooting how to do the access to the DLC, once you arrive, you're like, okay, I get when this is in the literal sense and that it's day 3, but in the figurative sense, when the fuck is this? Like, what's my relationship with
done?
Kim? What is my build at this point in the playthrough? Like, who is and isn't alive? Like I genuinely don't know when I am story wise. So like, oh my god, it was such a problem. It's why I never want to load into an old game. It's why when enough time passes, I'm like, I guess that playthrough's dead. It was like unusual that I went back to Iceborne after a year of hiatus and beat it, because anything else, it's just like, games are really hard to pick up after they pick up mid playthrough. Like there's so much onboarding and stuff to remember.
It's funny that you mentioned Disco Elysium. Later I'll ask you how to activate that because I don't know either, and I want to make sure I don't miss it. But I did.
You won't miss it if you're playing a new playthrough. It's entirely a trying to access it in your old playthrough because you just want to play the new content and not start a whole new file problem.
I see.
You literally just get your because like you get political points, and then there's like a dream sequence where you like embrace your politicalness, which I think was even in the original game, and that scripting is what starts the new content, because the new content is 4 different politically motivated quest chains depending on which like branch you went down, which I guess is replay value because some devices 4 playthroughs.
I'm gonna get the liberal thing. It's funny that you mentioned that because
that's the character you hate the most.
That's fair. It's not the character that I hate the most.
Was your first playthrough a communist, and then
and now it's a liberal?
Then you played what you hated, and you was a liberal.
I'm not going to play the Nazi. I don't want to play the fascist. I don't want to do that.
It's just funny because in the communist storyline they make fun of you.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that because I'd finished recently, or I'm finishing right now, the second DLC for the Outer Worlds, and that one is very easy. Those are very easy. They just show up on your ship. You install the DLC. You load up your last save. They make it really, really simple.
And games that were really really planned around the idea of like new content coming in, because it's the same format they used for Fallout 3 and New Vegas. You'd get those like 5 different expansions, and they would just literally pop up as like a waypoint on your map essentially. Which what I don't like about that system is the clunkiness of like when you.
It is, yeah.
I think it's really clunky and awkward when you play a game after the DLC is already out, but it's your new playthrough and you've never played it before, and like minutes into the game, they're like, "Wow!" and here's the 5 waypoints for the 5 DLCs, and it's like, okay, you could have worked those in somewhere, like organically.
They don't. They don't do that. They don't do it like that in the Outer Worlds, but it's still very clunky because it feels like a detached part of the game, which admittedly isn't as much of a problem in the Outer Worlds as it is in
the Outer Worlds. Already has the thing where you leave the first planet and there's just a map of the solar system, and so they can just slot new things onto that.
But they are such huge adventures. Both DLCs are easily 10 hours, probably 15 hours of a playthrough that are longer than even the longest planet in the main game, and it's just it feels like a very different adventure. So it like if you're playing the game blind and you don't really care about the DLCs, you just bought them because you buy everything and play everything,
or you got the Game of the Year Ultimate Edition or whatever.
It's just it feels very different. Like it's not. I mean, it's very much like in Fallout New Vegas. I know you haven't finished it, or have you? I think you didn't.
I got one of the. I think I played Fallout 3 and New Vegas, although I remember 3 a lot more. I think I played them in my like distracted gaming phase, like before Let's Playing, where I would be like listening to a podcast or a YouTube video, which is looking at you, my own audience, all you multitaskers out there. Guess what? You're not really fully experiencing either thing when you multitask too hard. Like I only multitask when I'm playing like a Satisfactory, or like I'm grinding or something, like something that's like pretty slow paced and chill, because like otherwise it'll be like, I remember there was a phase where I would play like I'd have a movie running and a game, and like I wouldn't absorb either of them. Like I've seen,
yeah, you can't
I've quote unquote seen like, I think Ninja Assassin or whatever via a TV that was running in my room, and it's like, what a stupid waste of time. Like I didn't absorb any of that. What was I doing? And yeah, I beat Nier, the original one, in my free time, and like Fallout New Vegas and so on in my multitasking phase of like when I was mostly like I was kind of like in a achievement hunting efficiency mindset of like beating games basically not even for the sake of the game, but because of some stupid number, while also like burning through this endless YouTube backlog and so on. And it's like, there's so much I just don't remember from that whole era. Like it was such a waste, but it's kind of good news for my Let's Playing, I guess, that I could then be like, what the fuck happens in this game? I can't even tell you what ending I got, like what faction I sided with. I don't remember. You'd think I'd remember.
Yeah, and the thing with Fallout New Vegas is that the subtext to a lot. There's some. I say the subtext. There are some factions and some quest lines that aren't as much about the subtext, but there's a lot of stuff that goes like underneath the whole narrative, and you need to catch the repeat themes and be like, oh, that's what the game is talking about. And that's the reason why I was talking about the DLCs for that game, is that the DLCs are a completely different subtext. There's just a story in and of themselves. And the last one, or the one that you should play last, is sort of like a zany, dreamy trip through a world completely devastated by nuclear weapons. It's like a completely separate part of the world, but still, it's and there's this guy talking to you on the radio sort of all the way through, and he's like the biggest self-assured kind of villain, and it's just I personally I've played that DLC twice now, and I personally did not like him at all, and I feel that it undercut, because you are supposed to play that before you finish the game. It undercuts the narrative of the game, because you build up to this big it's not really necessarily a battle, but this big event in the main storyline where everything is going to culminate, everything that you've worked for, all the people that you dealt with and all that. But before you do that, you should go and play the DLCs, or either, mixed in here and there between the other quests that you're doing, which is fine. But then the last DLC specifically is very difficult, and it should definitely be the last thing that you do before the last battle. Even the DLC itself says that. Like, by the end, it says, oh, now you're going to do the big culmination of the main quest. Not with these words, but it does say that. And it's such an It undermines the whole narrative by changing its pace in a way that the main game doesn't have that. The main game, you just do the culmination and you finish it, and that's it. But if you play the DLC, there's like this 4 or 5 hour long journey of somebody shouting into your ears every once in a while and just being like, oh, this thing and this thing. And it's like, you are just an idiot. At least that's my reaction. Maybe some people are going to like him. And judging by the comments in my videos, some people did like him. And I don't understand. It's just, I feel like that sometimes
in that game, don't they?
Yeah, you're talking about the Caesar's Legion. I don't know. I don't know if there's much. There's many people siding with them. I think the thing is, specifically in Fallout New Vegas, but also in Fallout 2, because it deals with the same factions in the same sort of narrative. There's this faction that's called the NCR, the New California Republic. And there's a lot of people that don't understand that they are criticism. So they're not necessarily the bad guys, but they are a criticism of the United States government as it is in our world, rather than as it was in the world of Fallout. Because the world of Fallout, for those who don't know, it splits in the 50s into a different timeline. So it's effectively it's a different timeline. It's not just a sci-fi thing. It's the reason why it all looks like that. The Apollo mission wasn't called Apollo, and it was a different year, and the Russians also went to the moon, and there's a bunch of things going on with the timeline there, and the games talk about that. But what happens is that the nature of the United States government, which was one of the players in the war that destroyed the world in Fallout, the United States government, the way it's depicted, in specifically more in Fallout 2 than the later games, rather than in the first one, but it's still the way it's depicted, it's sort of a caricature of the the Cold War government of the United States. So that's, when you deal with the Enclave, which are the remnants of the government, and when you deal with just the remnants of the government, you're dealing with a fantasy caricature of a real world government, right? But the NCR is supposed to be more close to the ground and close to the heart of the people who play the games, which are the people that live in the post-80s and post-90s world. And so the NCR itself is a criticism. And so because of it, I think there's some people who miss that. And I don't know. There's
criticisms
stuff
don't tend to land. Like we just rewatched Starship Troopers last night, and that was a book adapted into a movie where Paul Verhoeven, the director, he not only did he read the book and was like, this is a fascist book, so he turned the movie into a criticism of fascism, but also specifically a criticism of the United States. And Americans watch that movie and they're just like, yes, this, but unironically. It's like, oh no, this is the entire life and world presented by Starship Troopers the movie is just a fucking dystopian hellscape nightmare. It's the worst, and people are like weirdly like the pro-military people are like into it, but like I think I watched that movie. My dad got in trouble with random people, not really in trouble. He got a lot of side eye because he took me to that movie as a kid when I was like 6 or 7. And what was funny is it's full of all this violence and gore and fascism and other stuff. But really, the real reason people were mad at him was definitely because there's a co-ed nude shower scene where a bunch of men and women are all showering in one shower together. And it's like, nudity, egad, we can't have the children's be ruined by this. Which is funny because, like, as a kid, I watched that movie and there's a lot of things that stuck with me, but none of them were even, I didn't even register the shower scene. Like, I'd forget it was even there, but it's like supposed to be like this big problem. I was seeing it and I wasn't even like aware of that. But
kids don't register that stuff.
No, it's so whatever. But I kind of credit that movie with being why I've always been uncomfortable with like the sort of culty aspect of the American military, and like the way that they bring you in and they like shave off elements of your personality and your being and kind of like try to make you like mold you all into a similarness, and then also like the actual goals of the military and all that are like, there's a number of things there that are just like horrifying. And its role in the world and society beyond that. Like, there's not a lot good to say in many ways. But like, I think that movie is why, like, ever since I was like a young child, I've been like creeped out by the United States military. So it's kind of funny that I think there's a surprising number of United States military people that are like this, but unironically with that movie. They're like, yeah, this is, oh, hoorah. And it's like, oh no.
That happens a lot with Cold War movies, like especially Vietnam War movies,
or even Fight Club.
It's just or Fight Club, yeah.
Like, yeah, Tyler Durden's great. Fight Club's great. It's like, what the fuck did you watch?
It's interesting because I think New Vegas is, or the way the NCR is depicted in New Vegas is also because, or it's also a sort of an allegory for the Vietnam War. The situations are kind of similar in a lot of ways, except the bigger like overworld, not directly in the game political situation with New Vegas and all that, but the situation of the troops on the ground that you deal with the NCR, very much that sort of thing. But the game just doesn't overplay it. It's not like blatant in your face, So I think if people don't pay attention, I think it's okay for them to miss that. But people who are paying attention and know what they're looking at, and fail to see that, it might say more about their own stances on things than it does about necessarily the game or how easy it is to spot some of this stuff. Because I've never watched Starship Troopers, but of the movies that I've watched that are similar in message to that, it's always pretty blatant that something is off. Something is, like, as a kid watching stuff like that, it's just like, yeah, there's something here that I'm not quite getting or not necessarily aware of the implications.
I don't know. I think there's definitely people who don't think about media beyond the entertainment value. If they're either having a fun time watching it or they're not, and that's it. They're not reading into anything. They're not trying to read anything. And that's usually, like, those are usually the people who are upset about, like, politics and anything. It's because it's obvious. That means they can't ignore it. There's no,
because everything's political, but certain words come up and something like, you said the thing. Now I'm realizing something's political.
Yeah, like that's
Laura Dern has purple hair. Colored hair. I've been conditioned to think colored hair is bad. Now it's political. Like, they have really specific triggers sometimes.
Yeah. So, like, I mean, everything is political to some extent. Sometimes you don't have to care enough to get it. You can just watch the movie and clap your hands and go like, "Wee, that was fun." And like Starship Troopers is that. Like, you can just the first time I watched it, I just clapped and went like, "Wee, that was fun. They killed the aliens." Like,
she
I don't
shot a
care
circle
about
in the top of the beetle and he threw a grenade in and it exploded.
Yeah. Like, why do I give a shit about the
then you just,
the
like,
politics
tune out
of
the
the
part where
world?
Dookie Howser walks into the room in a fucking SSR, he's fucking, like, Nazi uniform. Like, it's like overtly a Nazi costume. You're like, oh my god. America's darling young doctor boy is a horrible fascist in this scene.
You don't have to care like that. All of that stuff
if
doesn't
you're not
matter.
engaged.
No, it's often really informative to, like, hang out with, like, your extended family and watch a movie and then watch how often they, like, just start talking over the movie about stuff unrelated to the movie for like 10 minutes at a time, and then and looking at their phones, basically just waiting for, like, the next, like, sex or action scene to happen that, like, catches their attention again. Like, you just watch people just ignore the media in front of them continuously, and you're like, oh, okay, I understand Transformers now. Like, I get it. Like, this is why people watch Walking Dead and they complain there aren't enough zombies. And I'm like, were you expecting a 10-season storyline about just fighting zombies continuously? Like, did you not think the people were going to come up? Or, like, people always complain about the humans in Godzilla movies, and I'm like, you mean the plot? That's the plot. The other part is just a rubber suit doing a silly fight with another rubber suit, and there's almost no storytelling or, like, stakes to it if you just watch it in a vacuum. But, like, that's apparently all people want to watch, and it used to be rubber suits, now it's CG. So they just want to watch the almost incomprehensible CG monster fight the other almost incomprehensible CG monster. And it's like, that doesn't, no, like, you gotta, it's like Rampage. The movie Rampage knew, like, you gotta have The Rock, and The Rock's gotta have, like, a personal relationship with one of the monsters, because, like, oh, it's the ape that he was looking after in the zoo, and it turned into a kaiju now. And then there's the evil scientist that wants to exploit the monsters, and, like, that's those are all plot points. Otherwise, it's just
stupid.
It's just Porcupine Dog fighting the gorilla, fighting the crocodile.
That's even more stupid. It's not the fucking point of Rampage. Jesus Christ. Rampage is just monsters destroying a city. That's literally the entire premise. It's just, oh my god, monsters destroying a city.
Yeah.
That's
I was only talking about how you make them. I was only talking about how you make a kaiju movie, not how you adapt Rampage. Because, Rampage is almost unadaptable in that you generally want to have some kind of, like, sympathetic character or someone to care about or something. But the game's Rampage are just three kaiju just destroying its, working together mostly with almost no conflict, really, just to destroy a town that offers almost no resistance, and then they win and they eat people, and then the credits roll. It's like, there's not really a story there.
No, it doesn't.
So
that's the point. It's a video game. It's supposed to just be fun entertainment. Like, it doesn't have to be a movie. No one built Rampage on the premise that it was going to be turned into a movie.
So when they adapted into a movie, they made one of them the good one. And then that one has to try to fight the other two. And oh god, I like somebody who enjoys monster designs. Like, I got there's a little bit of a little bit of Tobakadachi, my favorite Monster Hunter monster, is in there because they got there's like a porcupine bat wolf in that movie, and I'm like, this is great. I dig the shit out of this.
For anybody trying to look up Tobakadachi right now, it's Toby, not Tobo, and Keith mispronounces it every time.
It's
because I'm looking up pictures.
I pronounce it Tobakadachi.
Oh yeah,
not Tobokadachi.
I mishear it.
That's one of the other eyes. One of the many eye pronunciations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like
Toby,
Toby, like Toby, like a. I was gonna say like a dog, but it's usually spelled with a Y, but it's spelled with an I here. Yeah, but it's the flying squirrel blue lizard in Monster Hunter. Rampage has a fucking like like spiky wolf, and you're like, okay, I think I get this. I guess I get what he is. And then midway through, he fucking opens up these like body flaps and just flying squirrels around the city. And you're like, oh my god, this is great. More of this, please. This kicks the hell out of all those fucking like Sharknado movies where they try to come up with monster hybrids and they're all stupid. That was a surprisingly okay movie, actually.
There was, I think the I don't watch many movies in general, but my perception is that the 80s specifically, they had a lot of ideas for a capacity that the movie making technology at the time didn't have. Basically, the Sharknado in particular, and there's this other movie that stood with me forever.
Did you say the 80s?
Yeah,
Sharknado's like not even 10 years old, I don't think.
Oh,
it's by Asylum.
Sure? Yeah, Sharknado came out during like the Sci-Fi Channel era.
Oh,
I mean, they're still making those. We went down the fucking. They have a shark dog. I think it's shark. They have like Shark Wolf or something.
It's not that one. Which movie is it that they have like worms
Jaws?
Coming from the earth?
Tremors.
And they sort of eat every. Tremors. It might be Tremors. Yeah.
Tremors is a beautiful movie. It's visually great. They have these really cool moments where
it's
like
so
they're
janky though.
No, Tremors monsters look pretty good. They did a lot of practical effects, like in Starship Troopers, which we watched Starship Troopers last night, and that aged super well. Like a lot of the visuals look really, really good because it's mostly pretty good practical effects, and then whenever they use CG, it's usually like swarms of bugs, so you don't really like lock on individual ones to see whether or not they look good enough or whatever. It's just like the screen is just like covered with like an army of these things. You're like, oh fuck. And it looks practically new in many cases, and then Tremors looks pretty good too. It's got a lot of practical effects monsters. The sequels might have been shittier because they were cheaply made and so on.
Maybe that's what I'm remembering, because I never went to the cinema to watch that movie. It's always like showing up on television sometime. There's
this great scene where the one like the prepper style redneck that's in all the sequels. He goes into like his house's basement to get like his guns or whatever, and like a tremor bursts through the wall, and they do this really cool trick where they cut back and forth, and whenever you see the the perspective that shows the tremor, it's actually a different location because it's a miniature that they're filming, whereas he's obviously in a real room, and they keep cutting back and forth. And like as a kid, I didn't even realize it was different. It was a trick.
Yeah,
like at most I thought there was a genuine massive practical effects tremor in the room with him, as opposed to like a miniature that they were filming up close over and over again. Like like 80s effects were fucking incredible in many cases. 80s and 90s stuff before they started relying too heavily on early CG, which really was rough for a while.
I'm a huge fan of special effects, like practical special effects in movies, but only when it's like really, if it tries to be in your face, obviously you're gonna see, like, for example, The Fly, I believe, is a movie that I watched that I liked, but the CG itself, even though it's gross, it's like it's really obvious that it is just, whatever they use for masks and whatnot, because they go all out. They show the monster and it just stays on camera for a long time. But then movies that, I think The Fly is from 91. I think.
I don't know.
I'm not sure. I would need to look up.
That's the teleporter accident movie?
Yeah. With that famous actor with the chest hair.
1986.
86. Oh, okay. But still, like, every time I go back and watch Alien, which is from 76, almost 10 years of difference. But that game, that movie just looks amazing every time because they don't show.
That's because they do a really good job of having the mix, like he said, a mix between practical and CGI.
Yeah.
So anytime you see like an alien up close, it's a real guy in a suit, and anytime you see it from a distance, it's like either like half a figurine or something, or CG.
You can tell
they have to be so careful with it though, because even in the ones that are seen as the best alien movies, there are multiple scenes where I'm like, it's really silly
so many
looking.
times you can watch those aliens' bodies just like flop around because there's no spine, there's no meat.
Yeah, there's like floppy plastic here and there, and like every now and then it's just too obvious that it's a guy in a suit. Like you can see the shape of the person like too clearly, versus like the
or the
motions that are
motions
supposed to make them look weird.
Yeah.
I honestly think of that as just
fine. Like
the act. Okay. Yeah, it's fine for sure.
Like I think of that peak xenomorph is just seeing a close up of the head, and then the mouth comes out, and so on. Once the body is in frame and it's not dark enough in the shot, it's like, oh, that's really silly.
I mean, that's why the best scenes are always like the ones in vents and stuff, because you get like this half view of it running at you, so you don't really get to see a lot of the body. You see like its big fat head barreling towards you, and you're like, oh shit. Like,
it's not, because the thing is that makes the movie not about the horror directly of the monster that you're fighting. It's always about the consequences. And I think, like, obviously it's born out of technical limitations, because these days they'll show the monsters, and
that's just poor design, like directorial decisions. That's not really like, I would say the audience demand is a lot different than it was back then. Like there is more more preference to have like fast, quick action cut between like travel scenes, I guess you could call them, like where it's like we're going to a new location and a new location, and like people just want to constantly be somewhere different all the time. Yeah, but like like Alien specifically, like good monster movies are not about are not about the monster. They're always about the situation,
the friends we meet along the way,
the monster. Well, if they're still alive. But yeah, it's like
I was just thinking about Extro, a movie we watched a few years ago, where the monster's like the monster's like kind of silly looking, but the first shot you see of it is it on the side of the road in the darkness, like at night. It's like they're driving on the road, and and then they cut to their perspective of the driver, and you see this monster just for a brief second as they pass it on the road. So it's so brief you don't get a good look at it, and you're just like, what the fuck was that? And like and when you're on that level, it's just like it looked vaguely human, but like it's not the way humans are shaped. Like the things were like backwards or wrong. Like the limbs were not, that's not how limbs bend. Like it's like the Dead Space trick. Like you just need that quick moment of it showing like some kind of creature just for a moment. You like, and your imagination fills in all the gaps or can't. And then that's what bothers you. Yeah,
that's the real.
Because you're like, what the fuck was that?
That was the thing, I think, the one in Antarctica. For me, my first experience with that movie was precisely trying to fit everything that I saw into something that I could think in my head, and it just couldn't. It's because it's not. Yeah. It doesn't work like that.
Right from the beginning, in the first dog kennel scene, almost every time you see anything in the thing that's horrifying, you can't make sense of it because it's too complicated and too alien and seen too briefly. So you're just like, what was that?
That's one of my favorite movies, honestly.
Fucking like dog's head splits open like the Demogorgon's face, and then its skull falls out, and you're like, what? No. like it's just going too fast, and it's getting too weird. It's so distressing.
I do think that the ending sort of overplayed it a little, and when you do get to see like the whole thing, it does lose a little bit of its
when it goes
mysticism.
From alien to aliens.
Yeah.
They start space marining against the thing, and you're like, okay, it's a little much.
Yeah, but I think that's also like just the way the genre works. It generally ends up like that. I think there's a certain expectation.
Yeah, I mean the '80s was all action. It just sometimes you just didn't know you signed up for an action movie. But like you cannot watch an '80s movie and go, oh, this doesn't have any action in it, because it's just not how the fucking era was. Everything had some kind of explosion or guns or I don't even know,
or
games,
car chase,
something.
Oh
yeah,
God,
like a
remember?
car chase. Like there's always some kind of high octane,
watched...
like gotta get those boys interested in that date movie. Like
I haven't
otherwise they're
watched
gonna
a movie
leave.
I haven't watched a movie with a car chase in years and years. I miss car chases.
I just got done watching The Good, the Bad, the Weird yesterday.
I think I've watched that.
It's a Korean film about 3 people trying to get this treasure map and then getting to the location of the treasure. And so it's just a wild, fun ride of nonsense. Like the first scene you see is a train on these tracks, or like the first part of the action part is like this train on a track that they're trying to stop, and like the train just doesn't have a destination. Like it's just desert forever, and the track just keeps going forward, and there's nothing in the distance, nothing behind it. It's just a train in the middle of literally anywhere in the world with tracks going to wherever, and all this stuff happens on this train that is like an amalgamation of all different parts of Asia. So it's like you got Chinese and Korean and Japanese all blended into one, like kind of like Ghost in the Shell style, where everything's very, it's like somehow future, but also somehow like medieval times, Western style. You're like, what the? Okay. It's fun. It's just a dumb, fun action movie, but yeah, like that, I don't know that there's always, I'd say that there's always like everything has to have action in it, and how good the action is depends on what kind of movie you're watching. Like
for me, the biggest problem with action scenes, and car chases are different. I feel, because it's the cars going vroom vroom and I like it. But so even if they're badly shot or anything, it's always fine. But action scenes specifically, for me, I have a problem with them in modern movies because of it's kind of tied to the superhero movement in a way. They just don't advance the storyline, because an action scene is like, I don't know, it's just, it has to have a purpose. It has to have either stakes, or even if it has stakes, it still has to advance the storyline in some way. Otherwise, you're just waiting for it to end, and that's it. So I feel a lot of movies these days just will have action scenes that
it's
are
like the thing
gratuitous.
that action scenes have in common with like musical songs.
Musicals, yeah.
Where it's like they both need to establish something or move the story forward or do something. Otherwise, it's just you pause the movie for 4 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, action scenes are being used as like clapping the hands in front of someone's face. The idea is like, hey, pay attention. We're doing something here, and you're like, oh shit, all right. Like,
yeah, but like they need to do something. If it's because I don't watch.
Again, it depends on what the purpose of the action is and what movie you're watching. Like if you're in a horror movie, then the action is like the payoff to all the suspense that you've been building up.
True.
But in like Fast and the Furious, action's literally like all there is. If you don't have action, you might as well just like fast forward.
Fast
what
and
are you
the
gonna
Furious,
listen to like Vin Diesel and The Rock act at each other? You might as well just go watch wrestling. At least there's fun stuff happening.
That's a good point, actually.
What the hell? Like, who cares about the plot of Fast and Furious? Who gives a shit why these guys are in cars driving down the highway, blowing up other cars?
But the action is the plot.
Family.
That's the thing. It's all about it. But the
there
thing
you
is,
go.
I think
Easy,
the action itself
up.
is the plot. Oh, in Fast and Furious, I've watched a few of them. I don't think I've watched every one, but
There's
I
like
never
10.
come out. Yeah, that's true. I've watched like 5 maybe.
There's only 8 of them, Keith. The 9th one's
8?
coming out soon.
For me,
Too
my
many.
favorite is Tokyo Drift, but that's because they actually have a plot.
Is that like the second one?
I
the
hated
second
Tokyo Drift.
I thought it was great.
I was so
But-
bored. I've never watched a single one since then because it was so bad. Because it's
Damn.
It's the only one like that.
They want
though.
you to watch races between like CG cars, and it's like,
But it has a
wow,
plot.
What a race!
and
Cool.
there's stakes,
Look
and
at
he's
those-
fun.
Look at those video game cars
But
going.
there's no stakes if it's all CG. Like at least a real car, you kind of go like, man, some guy's driving that. I hope he's okay.
Might as well just commit and might as well just fully commit and watch Speed Racer.
Why? Just go watch Initial D. It has everything you
now
want.
The whole
Initial D is
screen
great.
is fake.
Initial D is great, but I think Tokyo Drift and Initial D are very comparable in the way the stakes are handled, and it's certainly like I think Initial D is very boring if you're expecting action because it's very cerebral. It's like I'm talking about an anime for clarity.
I think I remember hearing that there's like some weird nonsense going on with Tokyo Drift where like some major character dies in it, but then he's in the sequels because all the sequels are still prequels to Tokyo Drift. Like that's how they get around
That's
it.
weird. That's weird. That can't be. They have new cars in the sequels.
It's really
Fast
funny.
and Furious movies are basically like Adam Sandler movies where it's just an excuse for like a bunch of people to get together and hang out for like a couple of months in some locale. Where it's like, all right, guys, let's go like hang out in Cancun and film a Fast and Furious movie. And you're like, all right, like what else are you doing? Like,
But what I was saying is, you don't get bored watching them. At least I did. I never did. They're
does the president
nonsensical.
drive cars? Like, does all conflict in that world get solved by car chases? I don't really get like the premise of the Fast and Furious universe.
There's no premise. It's literally just being weird,
Like,
and also referential to other movies, and also just having cars doing weirder and weirder things that don't make
like
sense.
I'm surprised how far off my perception is here. Where I could have sworn this was like an old franchise that had like a trilogy once upon a time, and then weirdly got revived like decade later, and they were suddenly making a bunch of them for some reason. But
Fast and Furious.
Yeah, I thought it died. And
No.
I thought it weirdly came back one day, and I'm like, why are they making sequels now?
No,
They never stopped.
Yeah, no, I'm
stopped,
looking at the wiki. Every single sequel is 2 or 3 years after the previous movie, consistently from the beginning. Right now, F9 in 2021 is the longest gap of 4 years ever.
F9. Get the.
They can't. I mean,
What the
come on.
fuck? Did you just throw away all of the words? Like, there's a whole fucking sentence.
The Fast and the Furious. Too Fast, Too Furious. Fast and the Furious. Tokyo Drift. Fast and Furious. Fuck you. Fast 5. Fast and Furious 6. Furious 7. The Fate of the Furious. Not even a number. F9. The Fate of the Furious. I was sure they were going to be like, oh, wait, no, they already did Fast 5 and then Furious. Oh, I was going to be like, is it going to be Furious 7, Fast 8?
I don't think
Furious doesn't even have a number.
I don't think I've seen The Fate of the Furious. That one is after Paul Walker died.
I don't know.
I don't know when he died.
What?
I think he died in 2015.
He might have died in 7.
Yeah, I think it was Furious 7.
The biggest
Paul
sin.
Walker dead.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the bigger sin here is. I'm not sure if
He
it's
died
the
in
fact
2013.
it was 6 then. I'm not sure if the bigger
it's 6.
sin here is the fact that they did the Fast and the
Haha,
Furious
no.
and
He
Fast
finished
and
filming
Furious.
on 7 before
There
he
we
died.
go. I was right.
Jeez.
Sorry, Keith.
I don't know if it's worse that
That's
they just reused the same fucking title twice between the Fast and the Furious and Fast and Furious, where it's just they just removed the thes, or if it's worse that after a whole franchise of wacky titles, fucking 6 is just literally just called the Fast and the Furious 6. Like, wait, what the fuck? That's like when they had Mario Kart 8, and it's like, wait, you haven't been numbering any of these. Why did you start? Wait, 7. Yeah, Mario Kart 7. They just suddenly had a number, and you're like, what? These were never numbered.
Wait. Oh, okay.
It's weird. I get the impression that all of these are decided by committee. They just come up with a list and choose it. Get some focus groups to say what's the coolest, and that's it.
Well, naming is always a marketing decision. So there's always somebody who says, hey, we have a better chance if we name it Mario Kart 8 and not Mario Kart. Because, like, someone's going to... there's more demand for a sequel than there is a need to get new players in. So, like, you don't have to call it Mario Kart because you don't want to, like, exclude people like, oh, I didn't play the other 15 Mario Karts. Is that okay? It's like, it doesn't matter.
Will I
like,
pick
it's
up
Mario
on the
Kart 8.
nuance?
Yeah, like, and so if you call it like Mario Kart 8, people are like, finally a new Mario Kart. Ah! Like, that's all they care about. And
It's the same
you can get away
frustrating
with
logic of them being like, new Super Mario, and like, now all those games are old.
Yeah, like that, or the new DS. Like, oh, you want? Hey, I still have my new 3DS. Like,
Remember when
That's its name.
there was a weird string of games that were called like game name next.
Yeah.
I hate
Yeah, I
that.
remember that.
I hate that naming scheme. Like EverQuest Next was going to be a thing. I think it's just scrapped now. And like I think No Man's Sky, one of its big one of the big updates that was supposed to save it was supposed to be like No Man's Sky Next, and it's like,
They do that every once in a while, just as internal designations.
It's like a callous, dismissive title for your thing. It doesn't even tell me that you care about, so why should I care about it? Next thing you're going to tell me you're going to call it Revelations. It's like, well, I guess I don't have to buy this one. Could I come up with a better title than Revelations?
I mean,
Revenge
have you seen the name of sport title games?
Oh my god, sport. Oh.
It's just the year.
Sport year. Like, that's all it is every time, forever. You can't even put like a tagline like this year's gonna be good. It's just sport year.
It's just their target audience to some extent. Because like all the sports because the real life sports are just about like what year it is. It's like, oh, it's Super Bowl 50 and shit like that, and like, and to some extent just like car models and so on. Like, oh, it's the 2013 Honda Civic or whatever the fuck. It's like that's the kind of branding that sports games are going for. That's all they're after. It's like, oh, just so you're sure this is the new one. Buy it.
But why the fuck do Super Bowls have Roman numerals?
I don't know.
Didn't 50 not have one?
Yeah, 50 didn't have one because they were afraid of. They seemed to be like afraid of explaining to people what L meant. So
they
Super Bowl 50 was suddenly the number 50 instead of L, because that's the
now
Roman
it's
numeral.
L11 or LII or L.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, they've kept the Roman numerals before and after, but for some reason, when it was 50, they put 50.
Video games also do that.
Why? Like football didn't exist in Roman times. This is some kind of like fucking thing we stole from them. Like, what the fuck? Why would you use just use numbers? We have numbers.
Everything that uses Roman numerals doesn't date back to Romans. It's just a stylistic choice, like Final Fantasy.
It's specifically weird with football, though. Like, why? Why would? why do you like? I don't understand what it's like. You know, it has all this hype, all this production, and then it's like L111. You're like, what the fuck is this? Just put the fucking number there. Well, what is wrong with you?
People just think Roman numerals look cool, I think, but that's the problem.
That's the problem. Until like 10. After 10, it doesn't look good anymore. Now it looks like you're spelling a word wrong. Where you're like, what? Why? They're just letters now. What the hell happened?
I think it's fine for a while. I think the issue is when you run into 50. Because once you start getting to like more recognizable letters, and you're like, oh, okay, this is something else. But like 1 through like I think 48, because 49 is like IL, I think, and that looks bad.
No, 49 is XXX VIX. No, what? XXXIX. That's how it is.
No, Super Bowl 49 is live. It's LIV.
No,
I think you go for 40s, 4 X's, right?
That'd be 4. That'd be 54, Andrew.
Is it XL?
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. It's
XLIX. Two numbers. It is XLIX, isn't it? I haven't done.
There's a Super Bowl XXXV111. Like, fuck you, dude. Just put the fucking number there.
Well, I think part of the appeal of Roman numerals is that it spams a lot of X's and V's, which are like cool letters. So you put those in your title instead of like a number. And I think it's that simple. I think that's why there's an appeal for Roman numerals for like Final Fantasy and shit. It's got an X in the title. X is Cell, Mega Man.
And
X,
for Resident
why is it
Evil,
called X? I don't know. It's an X.
Where it's like Village X's. And it doesn't have a 7 or 8.
It's fucking dumb. It just looks fucking dumb. Like, this logo looks atrociously ugly, and I hate it. Like, you couldn't even make a good logo because there's so many fucking letters that you couldn't fit anything. Like, all of them usually have some kind of like fancy, like they'll have a trophy there, they'll have like, oh, we're gonna use the letters to make something, but it's just like, no, circle, super, XXXVIII bowl. That's it. Can't do nothing else with it. It's too big. Like the rings must have been awful. Like the rings had to be like the literal size of like a fucking hand just to fit all the damn letters on the side and the person's name. We're like, wow, this is a good ring. Love it.
My problem,
my fucking car.
My problem is when games
I'm looking at the list here now. I'm actually genuinely confused. I don't understand Roman numerals as much as I thought I did.
I don't think they understand Roman numerals as much as they thought they did.
Because I guess you subtract. Because I know that if you put a smaller thing before a big thing, then it's like subtracting.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize that you start that. Because I guess when you get to 4, you put it before the number for 5, for example, and that's when you get to the weird part of Roman numerals. I didn't realize that applies also to like 10s and 50s and other higher intervals. Yep. So yeah, like 40 is XL.
Yep.
And then you just count to 10 basically after the XL for 41 to 49. So yeah, 49 is XLIX instead of just, I thought it'd just be IL because it's one less than an L, but it's XLIX. No. Like, what the? This is a lot. Yeah. It's unnecessary.
Yeah, it's weird. And the thing is, it's non-standard
but
as well.
They had a chance. They had a fucking chance to cure this problem. They had 50. They just could have just kept going. Just 51, 52. No, they just were like, nope, going right back to fucking Roman numerals. Like, no, yeah. you did it. You did it. You broke away from this really shitty, ugly fucking trope.
If I remember correctly from people complaining about it, I think Super Bowl was also already misusing its Roman numerals leading up to 50 anyway, too. Mostly to avoid having an L, I think. So it would just be like, more X's.
Well, yeah, because it looks stupid as fuck when it's Super Bowl. Like, oops, put an extra L, though.
Super Bowl.
Like, you put 2 L's after bowl.
God.
Like,
maybe that is why they did 50.
Well, yeah, it would look fucking stupid.
I just had the thought of, like, maybe the aesthetics of an L isn't great, both because it's just a letter that doesn't feel Roman numerally inherently, but also because it's the letter for losing. It's like, I'll take the L, and it's like, that's not great. But yeah, when you spell it out, it's Super Bowl.
It looks like someone misspelled bowl, and then it looks awful because every single thing you print has a misspelling of bowl on it. Like,
it's no wonder that
just use numbers. Otherwise, if you're not going to use numbers, then stop being a fucking coward and commit to making the score also Roman numerals. Because I don't want to sit here and see your ass using regular numbers for the scoring system, but you're not going to use it for the name of your Super Bowl. Because if you're going to go Roman, go all out.
It's no wonder that the Arabic numerals just took over. They're so much easier for so many reasons. I remember
there's something I wanted to ask you, Colonel. I don't know if you've looked into it because it's being listed as an RPG. Have you looked into Biomutant at all?
Nope. I don't know what it is.
Then never mind. I'm coming up on Rise finishing, so it's time to pick a new RPG. And there's always that question of like, do I play the most recently released Western RPG, or do I dig into my backlog of like my to-do list of like, oh, time to play Who's a 75 or whatever.
You know what? Actually, I did look into Biomutant. I saw it in a list earlier today, and I looked at the pictures, and I couldn't figure out a thing from the screenshots on Steam.
Yeah, it feels a little impenetrable. I've been trying to poke into it, being like, is it going to be a meaty enough RPG on what I consider to be RPG elements to be a thing, or is it just an open world like loot grinder kind of game, or what is this? And I'm like, okay, let's look at the pedigree of the past games by the developer. It's like, oh, it's their first game. Great. I have nothing to latch onto.
Yeah.
I looked up a video about the story, and it was some 6-minute video by some enthusiast YouTuber that's like trying to hype up on the game and clearly trying to like preset their YouTube account as being like the go-to place for stuff about Biomutant, and they said fucking nothing about the story, and I literally didn't even see a single scene of like people talking to each other even, and I'm like, what, do people talk to each other in this game? And like what I got out of the idea, what I got out of the idea of the game seems really cool, which is that you play as these strange, hard to identify anthropomorphic like characters that like they seem to like just pick up traits basically, like, so like you're evolving your character the way you do in RPGs by leveling them up and picking things for them, but you're doing it by like almost in like a spore kind of way of like picking up entire characteristics and changing your way your character looks and behaves. And in my brain, I think of a cooler game of like, oh, like suddenly he's got like raptor claws and like a foxtail and like all these weird, bizarre amalgamations of like animal traits and so on, because that's the powers you wanted to mix together for your weird form. It's like you're like some sort of advanced version of like Beast Boy from Teen Titans or something. But then I look at the screenshots of like every single image of the character is like a really similar looking guy with maybe different like markings, and he's just kind of vaguely poofy, and I can't identify almost any traits on him. And then I see gameplay footage and all the monsters that he's fighting also just like vague poofy dudes, and it all gives me a weird Viva Pinata vibe with like the fur and the colorness. That's like the colorfulness in the fur.
Yeah.
And I'm like, is it just gonna be a bunch of samey looking like poofy things fighting each other with no real like detail to it?
I have a lot of trouble when games don't define their genre immediately.
Yeah.
And just say things like none of this, all the titles are, I'm looking at the Steam page right now, and all of them are just written as if it's just assumed that games have combat. And I'm like, I mean, it's okay for games to be all about combat. I like a lot of games that are all about combat. But this game doesn't say anything about its combat. It's just like, oh, we're going to evolve, you're going to craft, you're going to be all of a new monster. And I'm like,
every time you look at something, it brags about how it's a kung fu RPG. And every time you look at gameplay, it's people shooting. And I'm like, what?
Wait, what do you mean the game is this is the company's first game?
Yeah, Experiment 101. It's a new studio.
Okay, because
on Steam anyway.
I was gonna say it looks like
their website. There's nothing.
Because it looks like the company was formed by previous Avalanche Studio employees, so they all were from Just Cause.
That's not a good sign.
Oh, so
no, it's not. Yeah. So everything I'm finding about it sounds like it's an open world RPG.
Yeah,
that's also not a good sign.
Well, I know it's open world. That's the only part of the description that's definable and concrete of like what it means. It says open world everywhere, but I'm like, I hear open world post-apocalyptic kung fu RPG. I'm like, is this gonna be some crazy Jade Empire shit? And I'm like, all right, let's do this. And then I see the weird like creature protagonist that keeps picking up different traits seemingly from like its environment or whatever to adapt, like it's like, you know, rapid fire evolution or whatever. And I'm like, okay, that seems interesting. But then every time I look at anything of it, I just see I see combat with a lot of shooting, or I see somebody just kind of running around a lot. And I'm like, okay, but like world, stakes, dialogue, choices, like other stuff. And then, you say that's tied to Avalanche. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's not great news. Because it seems like
it looks like
the RPG probably tacked on, and it's more of like the game's probably more of the Ubisoft brand of like, here's a big open world, go do every task that all these icons are, and that's kind of off-putting.
It kind of looks like it's a mix between that and like Metroidvania. So it seems like the idea is that you change your abilities to meet specific challenges. So like, oh, you got to fight these guys, and you need to change your attack to be this to counter them, or I want to get into this area of the map, I guess I need to give myself robot legs. Like, it looks like you're changing your character to fit the needs of a situation, and not changing your character to have a specific like character. You're not trying to like build a cool guy and making your way through life with it like in Cyberpunk. You're basically like, okay, I'm gonna need to do everything. So it's like more like Zelda, where, okay, it's the fire temple, I got to put on my fire tunic and make sure I have my fancy stuff.
The thing is, like, the way it's written and the way you're describing it, it might as well be, it just gives you a little bonus when fighting these monsters or when going through this level, if you have this sort of gear. And it doesn't, because it could be like Metroidvania, like you're saying, or it could just be extra bonuses versus water monsters.
I also can't decide if I like looking at it or not. Like, I'm looking at footage and it's like, it's so I'll be honest, colorful.
It kind of doesn't look appealing.
It's a lot.
Like visually, it looks too like
every now and then I see a vista that's like, oh, that's nice, and then I see another shot and it's like, it's so extremely colorful, and he's like riding like a blue moose, and it's just like a lot, and I'm like, okay, you went past Wind Waker and you landed in Fortnite. And like that's more or less the problem. like I love colorful games, but there's a specific garish, irritating look to Fortnite. And when stuff gets in that territory, I'm just like, okay, like look like a place a little bit at least. Like chill
Well, there's
a
like
little bit.
there's cartoony and commercial cartoony, and Fortnite is a lot more commercial cartoony.
A specific like child brand of cartoon for kids kind of look, which is like it's just too much because it's like hyper saturated. It's just trying to hit maximum stimulation visually at the cost of any visual design, and you're like, please chill, please chill.
Yeah, because then it just becomes noise
like,
at a certain point.
Like it took me a second to find the character on that picture. Like it's just everything's just so much. There's just so much going on. I don't know. I don't think any of the characters stand out enough against this background, which is like not good. You know, in Skyrim it's hard to not miss the people. Like you can easily find a person in Skyrim because it's just so bland and boring and void.
Yeah. I'll just have
but
to
this is like so lush and
closer
colorful.
look when it comes out. To figure out if I think, first of all, like whether I even want to play it at all, but then also like I got to figure out how to categorize it. Like, do I think whether I should think of it as like an RPG slot kind of thing or like modern AAA kind of thing?
I can tell you what Steam is telling me that if this game is relevant to me, and can I just say once again that Steam is trash to find new games? We can have a discussion about that, but it tells me that with a check mark, green check mark, similar to games you've played. And there's a game that I've played almost 300 hours and another one that I've played more than 150. And those two games are Fallout New Vegas and Dark Souls 3.
For me, it's Fallout 4 and Monster Hunter World.
What?
Okay.
What the fuck? How do you go from like Dark Souls to Monster Hunter? What?
Obviously, they are similar.
Dark Souls and Monster Hunter is a closer relationship than Fallout.
Well,
at least
I think he's just going for.
At least they're both
is it RPG?
like melee games with animation priority, which is a really specific brand of combat that isn't actually used much elsewhere than those two franchises.
I just meant more in like the sense of RPG. Like, there's a big difference between Dark Souls RPG and Monster Hunter RPG.
Yeah,
like,
to the point where some people don't even think of one of them as RPG.
There'll be a big old debate. Yeah. There'll be the people.
I don't know.
There'll be people that are like, there's so much depth in Monster Hunter. It's way more of an RPG. And I'm like, Dark Souls has narrative choices and Monster Hunter has 0. So one of them is 100% RPG and the other one's 0% RPG.
Mm-hmm. Have you guys played
fight, punch, kill?
Have you guys played new Resident Evil?
Nope. I can't. I put up a vote and people voted for by a factor of 2 to 1 voted for Subnautica.
I was surprised. I was really surprised.
It destroyed Resident Evil 8.
I'm not that surprised for Subnautica.
So I'm not playing it until Below Zero's done.
Oh wait, for Subnautica?
Gotcha.
No. I was thinking of. Didn't it go up on your latest Patreon series? No. The latest Patreon series of Keith. I thought
that's
it
Paper
was already
Mario.
out. Yeah, but like I think I saw a new game that got released. I thought it was Village.
It wasn't out yet.
Yeah, I'm mistaken then.
You can't vote for things that don't exist yet.
Yeah.
But I was like, it's like two different things that like, there's like things I cover and it's like whatever, and then there's things that I cover that it's like stuff that's really interesting to me and I want to play the stuff related to it and the audience really likes it and so on. So it kind of becomes like a no-brainer that I'll play the sequels kind of stuff like Dark Souls, but like I see Resident Evil and Subnautica as that, so it's really an awkward moment when they both had sequels within a week of each other. And I'm like, fuck, that schedule doesn't work that way.
Yeah, I was curious. I wanted to know. I guess I'll have to wait. There's a weird feeling I have about, I guess at least the first person Resident Evil games, and I don't know if it's like me just being, and maybe I'm just not the target demographic for it or not. Just trying to figure that out.
I got the impression, I haven't played any yet, either Village or 7, but I got the impression that they really focused on the body horror more starting from 7. And
I'm starting to I'm starting to feel like first-person Resident Evils are just a really bad escape room game. Like they're getting to a point now where I'm like, all right, I'm spending a lot of time solving really stupid puzzles. Like
PT really influenced them a lot, didn't they?
Like no one should be building a house like this. Really, this is absurd. Like it. How do you fucking go to the bathroom in these places? Because like every goddamn door requires like 15 steps and like a tablet from some other part of the town, and you're like, how the fuck do you even get into your house? Like, I can't get into your house without 15 things outside of your house. How do you get in? Like, you can't lock the door, really, I guess?
Made sense, 'cause they're the ones that take after the original Resident Evil, where you're in the Spencer Mansion, and there's like this whole process to like uncovering how to get to the all the different areas, and you pick up like a tablet fragment or a statue or a jewel, and you figure out where it goes, and there's different keys and so on.
Yeah, but like
those are my favorite. That's my favorite part of Resident Evil. I specifically
I agree.
like it better when it's that style of game than I'd like it a lot less when it's the style of 5 and 6, where it's just an action gauntlet.
Oh, so seven focuses more on that?
I don't like 5 or 6 either.
Seven's
like,
in the style of the original 2. Yeah.
Well,
I thought it's more focused
first
on
person.
like,
but,
but I thought it was more focused on the on just sort of like dealing with quick time events and stuff like that.
No,
I don't think there's a single quick time.
I didn't play it or watch any
events.
There's at least not like reaction time quick time events. I think there's just a couple of like cinematic struggle QTEs for a second where you go, pull the knife out of your guts or whatever.
Yeah. Because that's the stuff that always makes it to the trailers, and that's stuff I see.
But that's
and
not
like,
that's not gameplay though. That's not like the gameplay.
Yeah, I see.
That's just
moment to moment gameplay
moments.
is a lot of it's just trying, like you're taking a thing from one point to the other, and something suspenseful is either chasing you around or all of the above within your destination to get back. So it's like, oh, I found the thing, and now to bring it to the thing, and you're like, but the thing is chasing after me, so I gotta avoid that. And like,
that's the original Resident Evil.
Yeah, that's the core appeal. Is safe room
so
oriented gameplay.
Then I am not the target demographic, because it's
if you don't like the other type either, then you probably will just never like any Resident Evil games.
And that's fine. I just wanted to be sure, because I'm just like, it's all right. Like there are some good scary moments, but I kind of wish like that was the game. Like I kind of wish the game was scary, but a lot of it is just.
I think Silent Hill is better at
like
being
monotonous.
Scary.
No, Silent Hill's not.
No,
you don't think so?
No, for me, Resident Evil 1 and 2 and 7. And
they're tense. They're not necessarily scary. They're tense because you know the stakes. You know you might not have healing, or you might not have weapons. You might you don't know
for
where
me,
you're going.
that's where some of the fear comes from. Is like it's the constant ratcheting of tension of like in 1, 2, and 7 and so on. Like it's safe room oriented gameplay where you get to the safe room desperately, and then you look in you're like dealing with monsters throughout, and you're trying to figure out what stuff to grab and what stuff to bring with you, and then you run out of inventory space, and you're trying to figure out what to do with that. So when you get to the safe room, you're like, okay, my goal's over there. That's where I'm trying to get to. Look at this map. I can look at the map and figure out a route to go there, which I think will work. But it's a mixture it's a mixture of guesswork and memory, because you're like, okay, like the map says it'll work, but what was actually there? Are there like lickers there and shit that'll like destroy me? Or like, is Mr. X going to be walking through that part of the place at the time? And then you're like, okay, I'm going to take this many supplies with me and leave this much space in my inventory empty for grabbing things on my trip. And I'm going to choose to like use like there's certain resources you can make to like into ammo versus healing items, and like there's like choices to be made back in there that are all like calculated risks. And then it all goes to shit like in the field, like when you're actually dealing with like, okay, I think I can deal with this, or like, I'm gonna have to get through the liquor room, and like there's a way to avoid the liquors if I behave a certain way, and I just have to make sure that I don't agitate them and make this into an instant death combat nightmare. And then Mr. X busts through the wall, and you're like, oh fuck. Like that those levels of uncertainty and planning and trying to figure out what you're doing is like, that's part of the stuff. And like and like that's a mixture of like having too many enemies that you probably don't want to kill all of because they take like too much ammo to kill, and there's only so much ammo, so you want to like you're constantly choosing to like to try to like leave certain ones alive and evade around them, crossed with like certain elements like like the family from 7 or Mr. X are like characters that like you can't really defeat, so you have to like completely avoid them and like have routes planned to like deal with those things. Like that's like the core gameplay for me, and there's like I'm like that it's I need to be like mechanically engaged on some level and have a lot going on, and like the Subnautica thing to some extent, where I'm like there's like that has the same appeal where like I have my base that's my own self-designed safe room, and every second I'm not in my base, I'm either losing oxygen in my tanks or I'm losing power in the vehicle I'm driving instead of using my oxygen tanks, and like I want to like make a loop to a part of the world out there, but there's no map, and like I have a vague idea of which biomes are in which directions and where I am. And yes, I can make my way back to the base easily because there's a beacon there that tells me the waypoint. But as I'm exploring, I'm like, oh, do I want to push further into this weird bluish area? Like, am I going to find like this resource that I really need, or the next piece of tech that will give me like the blueprints for like the next like trajectory of my goals systems and so on? But like I'm hearing weird sounds in that direction. Like, do I want to make this risk? Like being mechanically engaged and having things that are my goals that I'm juggling with the scary stuff and the things that can go wrong, and then having the chance at any moment to be like surprised and have to throw my plan out the window and improvise. Like, that's great. Silent Hill, it has like no mechanics. There's nothing.
Yeah.
You have a pistol, you eventually have a shotgun, and then maybe some other gun. You have a fuck ton of ammo, and you just kill everything and watch some spooky things happen sometimes. And like the atmosphere is really good, but like the games are never really the games are almost never challenging, and there's almost no stakes in many cases. So it's mostly just like it's almost relaxing, honestly. Like there's a funny thing in my Silent Hill 1 and 2 playthroughs where I essentially created a self-imposed challenge that people complain about in the comments, because I had played Resident Evil before and was expecting survival horror to, feature survival mechanics or any mechanics. So I would like run past monsters in Silent Hill games. Because
but I think that's why you say that. I think that's why you say there's so much ammo. Because if my experience with Silent Hill 1 is that experience of
no, that's the big takeaway. It's like I ran past so many monsters and had such an absurd amount of ammo that I was like,
for sure,
wait,
yeah, you're right.
I'm playing it wrong. Like running past them is stupid. I could just shoot them all. And in later when I get to like 4, when it's like a pain in the ass to run past things because you have a follower, like you just shoot everybody, and you're like, yeah, the comments were right. I could have been doing this the entire franchise. Like, you could just shoot them all. You have so much ammo. If you're just searching enough, you'll just have so much ammo. You can kill every stupid blind nurse, and you don't have to deal with the fact that they're a threat. Because like I think I literally ran out of space for ammo in the early Silent Hill games. Like I had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of bullets, and it was comical. It's like I genuinely could have just been shooting them all the whole time. But then there's no stakes. It's like that's not interesting.
My only experience is the first one that I almost finished, and the second one, which I played a little bit. But my experience with the first one was just running out of ammo. I didn't have enough ammo, and I died a lot. Like it was a tense game, but I think it was like the pushing forward into the next room after knowing, like like I saw all of your Let's Plays of Silent Hill, including 4, and I did not like 4. I didn't like it, but. I know what you're talking about. Like your experience, I know what you're saying, and yeah, you're right. But my experience was different, though. When I played it like I think I was like 16 or 17, the first one, and it just I thought it was a scarier game because of the ambience. I think because for me, Resident Evil was always more goofy and more cartoonish.
Oh yeah, people would hate me saying it, but I feel like Silent Hill would benefit from instead of being styled after a Resident Evil game the way that they all are, they'd be better off being styled at, well, PT started doing this, like they'd be better off being styled potentially like modern indie horror games where you don't have that much ability to fight back and so on, because like
Yeah,
it really defangs
like
the whole aesthetic of Silent Hill when you could just shoot all the things, which is every Silent Hill game basically.
That's the problem I'm having with like Resident Evil, where I'm at the point now where like, okay, you're not making anything scary. Like you're like the games aren't scary anymore. They're just kind of like comically goofy. Where it's like, villain of the week, what can they do? And it's like, all right, whatever. And you just move along. But like a lot of the game is about knowing where pieces go in a puzzle. And it makes a lot more sense when you have the context of like, oh, there's like Keith is talking about, there's this tense situation where you got to figure out what you got to do and you got to make a plan. And it's like, or you could just do the Andrew method and just walk there. And if someone shows up, you just turn left and go down a hallway and then walk around behind them. Like
Bro,
you can
cool
Resident
ass
Evil
cucumber.
like Resident Evil doesn't give you a lot of situations where you're screwed. It's always like, there's a thing, but if you're not panicking, you can easily just walk away from the thing. Like multiple times now I've had enemies chasing me and I just walk to the thing I'm supposed to go to and they're following behind me. And it's like, yeah, but PT stuff is way better. PT is like a really good example of how you can have the first person horror cake and also eat have the puzzle mechanics at the same time, and it works perfectly. Like PT is a great.
You hated it. You hated PT.
I hated it because I hated PT because it was the wrong kind of puzzles where like the puzzles make zero fucking sense.
It was ARG bullshit where you're supposed to the internet was supposed to collectively solve it via bashing their face against it for a week, but then they found it in like an hour.
Yeah, but like the game I recently finished was Visage, and that's fantastic. That basically did like, what if we combined Resident Evil and PT? And it's amazing. It's great. You get a thing and you're like, okay, cool, I have a thing. What the fuck is this thing for? And you don't know, and the game doesn't have to tell you because like that's the terror. You're just like, I want to get the fuck out of this house. What does this thing do? And so you have to like think in your head while there's something always behind you or something like whispering around the corner, and like a TV goes off or the door slams shut and you're like, what the fuck? Is there someone here? Is there like a ghost here? Come on, come out. You open the door and there's nothing there and you're like, all right, I guess I'm crazy. And then like, there's a lot of like great atmosphere mixed with fun puzzles. And I think like Resident Evil is just, here's a bunch of fun puzzles, but we fucking dumped our atmosphere out the
Did you play the remake of 2?
No, I didn't play the old ones because I cannot do third person. I can't. Oh. It sucks. I hate it.
It's
even when it controls like a third person shooter instead of the old tank games.
Yeah, because if I'm gonna have combat, it needs to be first person. I'm not gonna fuck around with third person shit anymore. I don't need to. Like I can.
Because what I found interesting is
I
feel like they did a really good job at ratcheting it up, because like one of the things that comes to mind for what's so effective about these games is partly what we saw in like Resident Evil 2, where it's like the tension, there's a lot of the fear and tension comes from the struggle, and the struggle comes from the fact that it's often just like, it's just overwhelming. Like you'll be in like Leon's, you'll find the desk room where Leon's the room where Leon's desk would have been amongst with all the other desks. It's like it's shaped like a ring essentially. Like you can like loop around, and so you have these situations where you have like this fucking zombie getting up, and then you like, do I run up around him or do I shoot him? And then as you go around, a second one gets up. You're like, oh, now we can't use the fucking loop. Now it's a problem. Now I gotta kill one of these guys or retreat via the door behind me. And when you're shooting one of them, it's like you get a headshot, but headshots don't kill them in that game. So it's like the head's fucking flopping around and shit because they recoil from every impact. And so it's this big struggle to like land exactly the right number of shots. Like you don't want to like spam your shots because you'll spend too much ammo when he's actually already dead. You don't want to make that mistake. So you're kind of like gauging each shot, trying to figure out whether or not it's lethal again. But you're like keeping an eye on both zombies at once while they're approaching, and it takes time to kill either of them. And this like every time this whole time you're like, there's a struggle to the aiming itself because of like the
trying to precariously like land these shots on these weirdly shambling creatures that just they move so strangely, and it's like a struggle to hit the right spot each time, so you can waste shots missing, and then all of this careful planning can just completely fucking go sideways when like you misgauge the range or whatever, and they just fucking actually end up grabbing you, or you try to run past one and you think you can make it and you can't, and they grab you and bite you, and you're like, all right, well, this is literally negative progress, good job me. Or they made lickers fucking terrifying. Lickers are just fucking lethal, and they just jump straight at you from walls at you and shit, and you're like, what the so like immediately you're like, wow, I'm terrified of these things, don't want to deal with these ever again. And you'll have situations where like you're running down a hallway and you're like, there's a zombie coming at me, and I want to shoot the zombie because the hallway is too narrow for me to get past the zombie, but I can't shoot the zombie because there's liquor on the ceiling and they're attracted to sound, so that'll activate the liquor and it'll kill me for me trying to fight the zombie. So do I try to just duck past the zombie and hope for the best? Because it biting me is even worse, potentially, because that might activate everything. And then as you're having all this thought, fucking Mr. X busts down the door behind you, and this fucking unstoppable Terminator's chasing you. So whatever you're doing, you gotta do it now. And it's like, these fucking moments are intense and insane. You're like, I'm so fucking overwhelmed. And that stuff was really cool. And the fact that instead of being a bunch of separate loading room doors like old Resident Evil games were, this one's one continuous building, so you can literally just hear Mr. X stomping around like upstairs or over on your right, like through a wall, and you're like, there's a constant reminder he's somewhere. Like they did some really cool stuff with that stuff, but yeah, you'd have to just tolerate it being third person.
Yeah, just the combat in third person games are not enjoyable for me. I have like all of my skill is first person, so like Resident Evil 8 is just this comical like, oh god, we shouldn't have invited this guy over. Like it's just you just walk in and a zombie shows up, you're like, all right, cool, headshot, knife, dead. Headshot, knife, dead. Like nothing matters, and there's no stakes. Like any enemy that can be killed will be killed instantly. Because like I just have good accuracy. I'm used to doing McCree in Overwatch. So it's just like click, knife. All right, move on. And it's like, oh, you can increase difficulty. It's like that. Yeah, but that just makes them bullet sponges, and I'm not gonna waste my time. Like, what am I? There's no. It doesn't add tensity because the maps are, at least in 8, the maps are so easy to just walk away from. So you can say like, oh, there's an enemy, bye, and you just walk away, and the enemy can't just is like, all right, I guess he's gone now. Like they're all slow. You're never stuck in a place with them. You're never like, oh no, I can't go away, but like, I'm trapped with zombies. Like, no, you can just leave, just walk out the window, or like walk past them sideways, because they all have long build-up animations. And so you can, if you're really bored, like I do, there's certain animation windups that you can get to a certain extent and then shoot them and they recoil back. And then you can just keep them in this beautiful loop where it's just like, and headshot, and headshot, and it's like, yeah, at some point, like I felt bad because I'm trying to engage with the game, but I'm like, holy shit, guys! Like I'm having more fun like breaking your game than I am playing the game. Like this is like I literally watched. There was like it has like the Mr. X character chasing after you or whatever, and there's a room in one of the places that has a merchant, so you can just go in and the enemy doesn't chase you in there. It's a safe room. So I just kept like walking out, and the person would walk down the stairs, and I'd go into the safe room. I'd walk out, and the person would like get just a little bit further down the stairs, walk back in the safe room. Then walk out, and the person gets right to the front door, and then you go back in the safe room. And then you hear them like walking away, and you come outside, and you're like, hey, and they turn around, come walking towards you. You're like, this game is it's so dumb. It's so dumb when you can easily do that stuff. And it's, I don't know, it's just like, and again, these maps are really easy to remember. Maybe they're supposed to be not as easy, but it feels like they're all just very obvious hallways. When you're in the wrong spot. You go like, oh, I'm in this room. I know exactly where I am. I just have to make this turn and that turn and go down the stairs, and I'm back where I need to be. And I mean, I've watched 2 other people playing it, and they don't seem to have that skill. So maybe I'm not like, maybe I've just played too many games, and that's my fault. But like that's like when I had I had a picture, like when it comes to horror games, I always do like snapshot memory of the location I'm at because I'm trying not to get stuck. And like when I played Visage, even though I had this memory, it meant fucking nothing. Like, because walk to a place and you're like, okay, cool, this is great. But like everything is terrifying. Like it doesn't matter how well I know the environment. Every single part of it is out to get me. Whereas Resident Evil is just like, there's a person in a place and they don't like you. And you're like, oh, okay, so just don't go to the person. It's like, yeah, don't go to the person. It's like,
kind of a fascinating breakdown of how subjective and weird horror is. Because we literally all land on different things. None of us agree.
But I'm also playing Fatal Frame right now. And Fatal Frame is fantastic. It is so good. And that's a third person, but it has the great distinction of being a third person game with first person combat. Because when you fight, you go into camera mode, which is a first person view. And so it's a perfect blend.
All your McCree stats aren't exactly helping anyway, because it's a fucking like photography game.
Yeah, it's also a photography game.
It's Pokemon Snap, the horror franchise.
But it does have it basically has a QTE moment where you have to hit, ideally you're supposed to take a picture of them right as they get to a certain point of their windup. And so that's where like the Resident Evil thing kicks in, when you're like, oh, I'm really good at doing the timing of like the bar fills up and now you get the like Fatal Frame shot and then it like does a whole bunch of damage. And so like I've never run into a ghost yet where I can't just two-shot them, where I'm like, and then I'm out. But that's great because when they come out, it's also
terrified. Funny though, because you're still thinking of it entirely in like mechanical terms, and it's like you've dissected it down to the where it doesn't have like the same impact in a weird way. Because the point of that mechanic, from what I've heard, is that the idea is that like it forces you to deal, like, because the assumption of in every horror game is that you're actually afraid of the thing it's interacting with, and if that doesn't work, then because like the whole game doesn't work in that case. But the whole reason that mechanic exists, from what I've heard, because I haven't played Fatal Frame before, is that they want you to force yourself to stare at the thing that you're afraid of. Because like reflexively you just want to be like, fuck, and then you just immediately like react to it instantly, like use it immediately, just now, God, get out of here. But like it's like, oh yeah, we're gonna make you uncomfortable now that thing's coming at you and it's gonna get you. It's going to get you. It's like, now wait for like an extra second while you're looking at it, like ratchet that tension, so you have to press it right at the right moment for the best effect. Like they're taunting you into being more uncomfortable.
Work,
I can see how it can work. I guess my takeaway is, if you want me to be scared, I can't have a weapon. Because the moment I have a weapon, that's all I look at the game as. I look at it as a combat game. Like, all right, how do you get the best metrics? I got to be the best at killing everything. And so like, yeah, I'm terrible at like Amnesia or Visage because I can't do anything. There's just a fucking guy walking down the hall. Like, Jesus Christ, I got to run. Like, what am I supposed to do? Put a flashlight in his face? Good job. But like, Fatal Frame or Resident Evil or Silent Hill is like, oh, there's an enemy. Well, they all have wind-up animations, or they have weaknesses, or there's like mechanics that you can use to your advantage to get them down. Like, if there's two ghosts in Fatal Frame, all you need to do is back up. If you can't back up, then wait till one of them arches at you, and then you shoot your camera, and it hits both of them. So if you put points into extending your camera view, then you can hit more ghosts at one time, and thus it doesn't matter how many they send at you, because you can just stand in a corner and look.
The struggle these games have is the fact that you're not engaging with them as intended, and that's not necessarily your fault, because it's just like, it's not your job to be afraid for the game, just like it's not your job to like think the comedian's funny for them. Like, they have to make you laugh, and the game has to make you scared. But if the game doesn't work on you, then it's like an element of like, well, then what are we here for? Because like the fundamental assumption doesn't apply, and then it just becomes the rote mechanics, and it becomes just like Slenderman, the 8 pages is just a game about walking around in the forest while trying to keep an eye on this guy while you grab 8 things, and there's just like an answer on how to do it right, and that's it.
It's funny that you say the engaging with it as intended. One of my favorite horror games, and possibly my favorite horror game, is Alien Isolation. And I played it for the first time,
which is a great example of exactly what I like. Except that game was exhaustingly long, and the sensitivity of the stealth stuff was just a bit much.
It was very exhausting. Every time I finished playing for a little bit, I was just my tummy would hurt. It was just because I was so tense all the time. But there was one thing that I didn't get, and so I didn't engage with it as the game intended, which was the flamethrower. So I used the flamethrower very sparsely.
Yeah.
But that game is super easy at a certain point when you get the flamethrower, because if you know how to use it, you can use it to basically do what Andrew is saying. It's just like the game gives you a gun against the big enemy. And it absolutely makes the game super easy. I, however, finished it the first time without actually realizing that you could use it like that. And it was an incredible experience for me. It was really tense, really scary, all the way through the end. And it was just an experience that I think the game didn't really have ready for me, because I had to make it by not understanding how one fundamental mechanic worked.
I mean, I think it was that way for me too, to some extent. It's like you get the flamethrower and you're like, oh, "This is so powerful," but it's like it's so valuable because I can run out of it. So it's like it kind of at most becomes like a water bottle for your cat. Like you're but you're like afraid to like overuse it because it's the flamethrower. What if I run out and I need it later?
But seriously, like the second time I played the game, it was super easy, even on maximum difficulty, because as soon as I had the flamethrower, I just, there wasn't the danger anymore. I would do the things I needed to do. I would know exactly what to do against all the enemies, and it was super easy. Like the game, objectively speaking, if you realize that what you need to do with the flamethrower early on, which the game lets you do that, then it steals you of that experience that I had when I played it for the first time.
These games are fundamentally different if you're not afraid of them, though, because then they just become the mechanics, and then it becomes purely a test of how good the mechanics are and not how good its emotional manipulation is. Like a good example of that is probably like I played Half-Life Alyx, and it was frequently terrifying to me, and I was deeply uncomfortable, and it was clearly not like an accident, obviously. Like it was not like, oh wow, you happen to not deal well with spiders, this is unintentionally scary. It's like, no, there's entire extended sections of that are more overtly horror themed than anything else in Half-Life, and it's like they ratchet up like crazy. But if that means nothing to you, then it's like a relatively simple series of guns fighting a relatively simple series of head crabs, and there's just not that much like meat to it. But because it was affecting me, it was just a fantastic experience all the way through. But that's really important, though. Like that the key thing is like, it's like when I recommend, I think I recommended Outer Wilds and Subnautica to Andrew, and neither of them really left like the right impact on him. And like if you don't have the right emotional reaction to the game to be in like the right headspace, then it's like it just doesn't like work.
Yeah. And I mean that's why I say if I'm not the target demographic, because I'm a particular person, and if a game's not made for me specifically, then I'm probably won't have a good time.
Is this Banjo-Kazooie? Yes, no.
I mean, I also liked Hollow Knight. I liked what's it called? I like Downwell. There are games I like, but it's very rare. It's like such a small window that like at some point there are differences between a game is bad and a game isn't for me, and I'm realizing that like
God,
almost
I
nothing.
want to see your unfazed Subnautica playthrough.
Like Subnautica doesn't phase me. I like you're talking about it, and I'm just like, if you run out of oxygen, can't just go to the surface, just go up to the top and
it's the
get your oxygen
more so than the oxygen.
Yeah, but like for me,
I was just talking about the fact that it was kind of just an interesting connection I was making live, like right now, that I haven't thought about before. Was just the fact that I'm like, oh right, like Subnautica kind of has the dynamic that those like Resident Evil games have. It's not exactly the same kind of Metroidvania progression through the environment, although it is a little bit, because you have to like get upgrades that allow you to go to certain depths and navigate certain environments and so on eventually.
Yeah.
But there is that feeling of like, here's my safe room. Nothing will happen to me while I'm here. The moment I get out, it's bad. Like the moment you leave the room in Resident Evil 2, Mr. X could be around. And the moment you leave, like even if it's a little mundane, literally the second you leave your base in Subnautica, some timer starts ticking. Like there's something you're running out of.
Yeah. You're always thinking in the back of your head, I should not be staying still.
Yeah. I'm just imagining you going off to like some of the places I've seen recently, even today, and being like, this big. And like not being fazed at all by like the monstrosities that are around. Then you start punching them and shit. I'm like, what? No. Why do you like this? I have seen distressing things in Below Zero, and I kind of want to see you play it just to see you not care.
I'll have to try. I'll have to go through and play one.
You just be like, oh, rubies.
It's been long enough. I specifically remember like in Subnautica, in the first Subnautica, I remember like going to a place where it was like really dark and something came at me and I was like, oh, can I make something out of that? I was like, it just immediately I was like, oh, I should probably kill that so I can make something out of that, right? Like I need that for my
Playing
getting escape
Subnautica
or
like
whatever.
it's Monster Hunter.
Yeah, like that's kind of
I'm
the
gonna
way
make
I
a
played it.
sword
Where it's
out
like
of that guy.
I have a goal. Like when the first time it was like, oh, you need to fix your things. It's like, I'm on it. Put my hand up to my head, like salute, and just jumped in the water and started looking for stuff. And I was like, need this and this and this, and just ran back. It's like, fix the thing. And it's like, okay, build a base. I'm like, that sounds a little less fun. All right.
Did
I
either
guess.
of you-
Like,
Playthrough would be so much faster.
yeah,
Did either of you ever play? I mention it every once in a while. The Long Dark.
No.
the Long
I
Dark.
keep meaning to try it potentially. I know that it was Ashley's other game because Ashley was my housemate that obsessively played Subnautica and did like the speed run video on my channel, and she was always alternating between the Long Dark and Subnautica. It's supposed to be
The
like
Long Dark is
basically
incredible.
the other open world survival game that's good because almost all of them are bad.
The Long Dark is very much about what you're referring to. It's just a different pacing and different setting.
Yeah,
but
it's just I'll be less afraid because instead of leviathans, they're wolves.
There's not a whole lot of fear. It's very much focused on the survival aspect. It's really good. I really highly recommend it. But it's not so much about the fear.
Yeah, it's like I'm just way less afraid of wolves, and no bear will ever be as scary as the one from Condemned.
I don't think I've Condemned?
Oh my fucking god! One of these days I'll play Condemned 1 and 2 on my channel.
Jesus.
Fucking bear, Jesus Christ! It's one of the
Yeah,
scariest
that's
things
a-
that anyone's ever made in a video game.
It's pretty good.
That whole fucking level.
There's that's the struggle I have is like there's not a lot of things that scare me except for like again the thing that makes me the most scared is removing my ability to fight because like if I can fight something
The final
then
boss fight in Condemned 1. Remember how stripped down and ineffective it was?
yes
It's just like a
Yes.
knife fight with like the killer from the game. It's like so you know he's a big deal because he's the killer that you've been going after the whole game. But like the fucking random house you're in, which is just for that level, it's like a series of like circular level design choices. So there's always multiple ways out of each room and a way to double back and loop around and come around at somebody from behind. So it's just this constant cat and mouse game in almost the pitch black where you can barely see against this motherfucker where every time you land a hit on him, he'll retreat and he'll always try to find a way to come up behind you. And there's always a way, like because the way that the house is laid out, you're like, this is a nightmare.
yeah it is especially like there's so much build up to the whole game about this guy and like you finally get there and you're like what is this Scooby-Doo ass bullshit like I gotta just keep going through doors and shit all the time
And it's a whole game about dudes trying to stab you by sneaking up behind you.
yeah it is a lot of that there's I
It's
guess
pretty much
that's
an entire game about fighting junkies in the dark with pipes.
with like objects you find lying
It's a very
around
personal.
it's like
it's such a personal game. You get like the combat is so like visceral and like gross because like you have a gun but you find like 2 bullets per level.
yeah it's like what Alone in the Dark wanted to be except it couldn't.
Oh god,
Like the idea that
there's
you
so many
grab
horror
random
games that we've played that are still just trying to be the first Condemned game. And that was a
Yeah.
launch game for the 360.
It was a
It's
launch
so
game. I mean,
old.
granted, it had a good impact. Like there was a lot of stunning imagery in that game. Especially, you know, because it is a launch title, so it's like, look at these graphics. Oh my god, is that a dead body? It looks so real. Like like all that stuff. But yeah, once you like break the meat down of Condemned, you're kind of like, what the hell? Like, what did you just put me through? What is this shit?
All right, it's about
weird,
time to
but-
wrap up. Any final thoughts from anyone?
I would like to talk one day about how Steam is bad.
I would.
Just gotta open.
I would
it.
like someone.
Just gotta open.
I would like
with
someone
it.
to make.
Yeah.
Please make a new Fatal Frame game.
I was going to say
it's...
opening with something as the secret, but actually I tried to open with Subnautica discussion and then never got to it for 2 hours because it got immediately sidetracked. No, it's how impossible it is to predict and control where we're going. You just get surprised.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for watching, everyone. See you next time. Send your questions to dialogchoicespodcast@gmail.com. We almost got to some of them, but then not.
We had plans to get to them.
We discussed it beforehand.
Yeah. We were very good at this.
We talked a lot about it. Bye-bye.
Bye.